The air in this pocket of reality tasted distinctively of stale iron and unwashed grief. It was not the sulfurous, burning rot of the underworld, nor was it the sterile, ozone-sharp scent of the human world he had just departed. It was a third thing, a heavy, humid viscosity that clung to the lining of the lungs. Dante stepped out of the spatial distortion, his boots hitting the asphalt with a heavy, deliberate thud. The tear in the fabric of space-time behind him did not close with a magical shimmer. It snapped shut violently, displacing the surrounding air pressure and causing the nearby glass of a shattered storefront to vibrate at a resonant frequency. He stood amidst the desolation of what appeared to be a major metropolitan intersection. Though the architecture was skewed, battered by forces that ignored civil engineering standards. He exhaled, a cloud of white vapor escaping his lips despite the ambient temperature being well above freezing. "Great," he muttered, the sound vibrating in his chest, a deep baritone that seemed to ignore the oppressive silence of the city. "Wrong turn at Albuquerque. Again." He rolled his shoulders. The red leather of his coat creaked, a sound that was distinct, organic, and worn. He shifted his weight, his internal equilibrium instantly recalibrating to the local gravity, which felt arguably lighter than he was accustomed to. His hand instinctively brushed the hilt of the massive blade resting against his back. Devil Sword Dante. It hummed, a low-frequency resonance that only he could feel in the marrow of his bones. The sword was agitated. It tasted the atmosphere. The atmosphere was saturated with negative energy. To a sorcerer of this world, the air would feel heavy with cursed energy, a suffocating blanket of malice. To Dante, the Son of Sparda, it felt like static electricity, annoying, prickling, but ultimately background noise. He began to walk. 50 meters away, the laws of biology were being insulted. A creature, a grotesque amalgamation of fungal growths and weeping eyes, lunged. Its velocity was significant, crossing the gap in under 0.4 seconds. In the context of this world, it was a lethal predator, a grade 2 cursed spirit driven by a singular, mindless hunger. Dante did not stop walking. He did not shift into a combat stance. As the creature entered the critical proximity zone, 3 meters from his person, Dante's right hand moved. The motion was not a blur. It was a deletion of frames. One moment, his hand was at his side. In the next microsecond, the silver-heavy pistol, ivory, was leveled. The mechanics of the gunshot were anomalous. When the hammer struck the firing pin, the combustion within the chamber was not merely chemical. It was infused with a sudden, sharp injection of demonic energy. The bullet exited the barrel, spinning at a rate that heated the air around it to plasma. Bang! The sound was singular, dry, and deafening. The bullet impacted the cursed spirit's center of mass. A normal projectile would have passed through the ectoplasmic flesh. This projectile, however, carried a metaphysical weight. Upon contact, the demonic energy coating the lead disrupted the cursed energy holding the spirit together. The kinetic transfer was absolute. The spirit did not fall backward, it vaporized. The upper torso expanded violently outward in a spray of purple ichor and dissolving shadow, the structural integrity of the curse failing instantaneously. Dante blew the smoke from the barrel, the action purely performative, a habit ingrained over decades of hunting. He twirled the gun, a rotation of steel around his index finger, and holstered it in a fluid motion that defied the friction of the leather. "Messy," he critiqued, wiping a speck of spiritual debris from his coat. "And rude. I haven't even had breakfast." From the shadows of a collapsed pedestrian bridge, eyes watched him. Megumi Fushiguro was holding his breath. His heart rate was elevated, sitting at 140 beats per minute, a physiological response to exhaustion and the lingering adrenaline of a skirmish he had just survived. He pressed his back against the cold concrete, his hands clasped in the formation for the divine dog, though he hesitated to summon it. His perception, honed by the constant threat of death, was screaming at him. What is that? Megumi's analysis was clinical, rapid fire, and terrified. The man in the red coat possessed no cursed energy, none. By all the laws of Jujutsu, he should be invisible to the senses of a sorcerer, much like Toji Zenin. Yet the man's presence was overwhelming. It wasn't a lack of energy. It was a different kind of energy, dense, ancient. It felt less like a power source and more like a predator's heartbeat. The stranger was walking casually through a high-density curse zone in Shibuya. He had just exercised a curse with a firearm, without imbuing it with cursed energy. That shouldn't be possible, Megumi theorized, his mind racing through the catalog of Jujutsu regulations. Conventional weapons don't work on curses, unless it's a curse tool. But the output, it felt like heat, like raw fire. Megumi observed the man stop in the middle of the street. The stranger scratched the back of his head, his white hair, messy, unkempt, catching the dim light of the veil above them. "Hey!" The voice cut through the silence, directed specifically at Megumi's hiding spot. Megumi flinched. His concealment was perfect. He had suppressed his presence. "Yeah, you, the brooding kid in the dark," Dante called out, turning to face the concrete pillar Megumi was behind. "You know where a guy can get a slice around here? I saw a sign for a pizza joint back there, but it looked like a giant toad sat on it." Megumi stepped out, his posture rigid, hands ready. He assessed the threat. Distance, 15 meters. Target, male, mid-40s, heavy weaponry visible. Threat level, unknown/special grade equivalent. "Who are you?" Megumi asked, his voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in his amygdala. "Are you a curse user?" Dante blinked. He looked down at himself, then back at Megumi. A smirk pulled at the corner of his mouth, a look of tired amusement. "Curse user? That's a new one. Usually I get demon, mercenary, or deadbeat. I'm going with option D, a tourist." Dante took a step forward. Megumi instinctively stepped back, his shadows bubbling at his feet. "Don't come any closer. Identify your affiliation. Are you with Kenjaku?" "Ken who?" Dante stopped, tilting his head. The playfulness in his eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by a sharp, analytical glint. He looked at the shadows writhing around Megumi's boots. "Cute dog. I had a dog once. 3 heads. Ice breath. Terrible at fetch." Suddenly, the asphalt beneath him trembled. The ground erupted. It wasn't a tremor. It was a breach. From the sewer system beneath the Shibuya crossing, a massive volume of cursed energy surged upward. The pavement shattered, tossing cars into the air like toys. A special grade curse. One of the registered disasters. The smallpox deity. Or something akin to it. A festering, bloated monstrosity that had reformed in the chaos of the incident. It towered over them, casting a long, sickly shadow. Megumi's eyes widened. "I'm out of cursed energy. I can't expand my domain again." He moved to summon Mahoraga, a suicide tactic, his final card. But the air pressure shifted before he could clasp his hands. Dante was gone. No, he wasn't gone. He had simply moved faster than Megumi's retina could process the image. Dante was now in the air, 20 meters up, suspended at the apex of a jump that ignored gravity's drag. He was upside down, looking the special grade curse in its many eyes. "You guys are ugly," Dante quipped, the sound clear despite the wind rushing past him. "Seriously, Do you coordinate the look? Is there a newsletter? The curse roared, a sound wave of pure concussive force. Dante didn't dodge. He blocked. He drew the massive sword from his back. Rebellion. The metal clanged against the invisible wall of the sonic scream. Sparks, red and black lightning, flew from the blade. Then the counterattack initiated. Style switch. Swordmaster. Dante spun. The movement was a blur of crimson fabric and steel. Aerial rave. 1 slash, 2, 3, 4. The strikes were not just physical cuts. They were spatial dissections. The blade moved so fast it created a vacuum, superheating the air into cutting waves. Swing, swing, swing. The special grade curse, a being that required a team of grade 1 sorcerers to subdue, froze. Dante landed on the asphalt, his boots touching down as lightly as a feather. He didn't look back. He slowly sheathed the massive blade, the metal grinding against the scabbard with a satisfying click. Behind him, the curse remained motionless for exactly 1 second. Then gravity recalled its duty. The monster fell apart in clean, geometric sections, sliced horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. The cuts were so precise that the cursed energy didn't even have time to explode. It simply dissipated, fading away like mist in the morning sun. Megumi stood frozen, his hands still half raised. His brain was refusing to accept the data. The output required to destroy a special grade that quickly, it rivaled Gojo Satoru, but there was no cursed technique. It was just swordplay. Dante dusted off his hands and turned back to Megumi, his expression returning to that of a bored vacationer. "So," Dante said, pointing a thumb over his shoulder at the dissolving mountain of gore, "about that pizza, is everywhere closed or is it just the apocalypse?" Megumi lowered his hands. The shadows at his feet receded. He realized with a cold clarity that if this man wanted him dead, he would have died before he even saw the gun. There was a profound sadness in the stranger's casual demeanor. Megumi recognized it because he had seen it in his teacher, Gojo. It was the isolation of the absolute, the boredom of the peak. But where Gojo masked it with manic energy and arrogance, this man masked it with a lethargic, heavy sarcasm. He carried the weight of 1,000 battles in the slope of his shoulders. "The city is under quarantine," Megumi said, his voice raspy. "There's no pizza. Not here." Dante sighed, a long melodramatic exhalation that seemed to deflate his entire frame. He looked up at the artificial night sky of the curtain, his blue eyes reflecting a history that Megumi couldn't begin to comprehend. "Figured," Dante muttered. "Story of my life. No pizza, just monsters." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a strawberry sundae coupon that looked suspiciously outdated. He stared at it for a moment, then crumpled it up. "All right, kid, lead the way," Dante said, gesturing forward with his chin. "You look like you're about to pass out, and I'm not carrying you." "Lead you where?" Megumi asked. "Wherever the party is," Dante replied, his grin returning, sharp and dangerous. "If there's no food, I might as well get some exercise. And this place..." He tapped his boot on the ground, sensing the vibrations of the Culling Game, of Sukuna, of the chaos spreading through Japan. "This place is crawling with things that need to be put down." The silence that followed the destruction of the special grade was heavier than the noise of the battle itself. Megumi walked. His steps were uneven, a betrayal of the internal hemorrhage he was likely suffering from previous fights. But he maintained a stoic rhythm. He kept a precise distance of 3 meters from the man in the red coat. It wasn't just caution, it was an instinctive animal reaction to walking beside an apex predator that hadn't decided if it was hungry. Dante walked with a different cadence. His gait was loose, almost lazy. his boots scuffing the pavement with a rhythmic shuck-shuck sound. He was looking everywhere, at the twisted skyscrapers, the veils of necrotic energy hanging like cobwebs between buildings, the frantic graffiti left by fleeing civilians. He absorbed it all with a detached, clinical gaze. "So," Dante broke the silence. His voice didn't echo. It seemed to occupy the space instantly. "You got a name, kid? Or do I just call you Spiky?" Megumi hesitated. In the world of Jujutsu, names had power. Giving your name to a curse or a curse user could be a fatal error. But this man operated on a logic that rendered Jujutsu obsolete. If he wanted to hurt Megumi, he didn't need a name. He needed a microsecond. "Fushiguro," he said, keeping his eyes forward. "Megumi Fushiguro." Megumi, Dante tested the syllables, rolling them around his mouth like a cheap cigar. "Sounds like a girl's name." Megumi's jaw tightened. "I get that a lot." "Don't sweat it. I know a guy named Lady. Long story." Dante chuckled, a low rumble in his throat. He kicked a piece of rubble, a chunk of reinforced concrete the size of a microwave, sending it skittering down the street like a pebble. "Tell me, Megumi," Dante said, his tone shifting. The playfulness evaporated, replaced by a cold curiosity. "What exactly broke this place? I've seen hells, I've seen limbos, I've seen demon towers erupting from the ground. But this," he gestured vaguely at the skyline, where the sky was stained a bruising purple. "This feels bureaucratic, like someone filed the paperwork for the apocalypse and forgot to sign the Save the Civilians clause." "It's complicated," Megumi replied. How could he explain Kenjaku? The Culling Game? Tengen? It was a labyrinth of lore that even he struggled to navigate. There are people, sorcerers, trying to merge humanity with something else, to evolve us through death. Dante stopped. Megumi stopped too, turning to look at him. Dante was staring at a billboard. It was a half-destroyed advertisement for a pop idol group, their smiling faces slashed by a fissure in the building's facade. "Evolve through death," Dante repeated softly. He reached up and scratched the stubble on his chin. Always the same pitch. Give up your humanity, gain power. Open the gate, rule the world. It's boring, Fushiguro. It's the oldest scam in the book. He looked at Megumi, his eyes hard as diamonds. "Let me guess. The guy running this show, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room? Talks a lot? Probably has a god complex?" "Accurate," Megumi admitted, thinking of Kenjaku's smug visage. "Yeah, I usually shoot those guys first." Dante started walking again. "All right, new plan. We find this architect of evolution. I introduce him to Ivory, and then we find that pizza. Sound good?" Megumi stared at the man's back. It was absurd. It was reductive. It was impossible. "It's not that simple," Megumi argued, hurrying to catch up. "He has an army of curses. He has absorbed abilities. He's ancient." Dante laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Ancient? Kid, I've killed things that were old when the concept of time was still in beta testing. As for armies," he patted the hilt of rebellion, "I love a target-rich environment." They entered the Shibuya station underground. The air here was thicker, a miasma of rotting biological matter and concentrated fear. The fluorescent lights flickered with a stroboscopic intensity, casting jagged shadows that danced on the tiled walls. Megumi sensed them before he saw them. "Transfigured humans," he whispered, his hands coming up. "Mahito's leftovers." From the darkness of the terminal, they poured out. Dozens of them. Humans twisted into mockery, limbs elongated, faces melted into screaming masks, bodies fused with blades and blunt instruments. They moved with a jerky, stop-motion horror, their groans echoing in the confined space. Megumi prepared to summon Nue. He had barely recovered enough cursed energy for a single manifestation. "Save your battery, kid," Dante said. He didn't even slow down. Dante reached behind his back, but he didn't draw the sword. Instead, a flash of red light erupted from his hands. Weapon switch, Balrog. Gauntlets and greaves of burning magma encased his limbs. The heat was instantaneous and intense, drying the damp air of the station in a heartbeat. "Let's heat things up," Dante blurred. He didn't run, he dashed, a streak of fire and motion. He met the first wave of transfigured humans, not with a blade, but with a boxing combination. Jab, cross, uppercut. The impact was sickeningly heavy. The gauntlets didn't just crush bone, they ignited the target. The transfigured human was launched backward, wreathed in demonic fire, turning into a projectile that smashed into the three creatures behind it. Dante was a whirlwind of violence. He weaved through the horde with the grace of a dancer, his movements perfectly synced to a rhythm only he could hear. 1-2, duck, weave, body blow. Ignite! He slammed a fist into the ground. A pillar of flame erupted, consuming 5 enemies at once. The smell of ozone and searing flesh filled the station. Megumi watched, mesmerized. This wasn't jujutsu. There was no chant, no binding vow, no domain. It was pure kinetic mastery amplified by an energy source that felt limitless. Dante fought with a smile, spinning on one hand to deliver a flaming kick that decapitated a monster, then seamlessly transitioning into a breakdance flare that knocked down a circle of attackers. It was stylish. It was performative. He was treating a horde of nightmares like a warm-up routine. "Woo!" Dante shouted, catching a transfigured human's bladed arm with his bare hand, now clad in magma rock armor, and crushing it. "Is this the best the evolution guy has? These guys are stiff. No rhythm." He delivered a final, devastating straight punch to the largest of the creatures. The impact created a shockwave that blew out the remaining lights in the corridor. The creature disintegrated into ash before it even hit the wall. Dante stood amidst the fading embers, the Balrog gear dissipating in sparks of red light. He adjusted his coat, not a single hair out of place. "Okay," he said, turning to Megumi. "That was a solid C- workout. Where to next?" They emerged from the station into the Dogenzaka district. The sky was darker now. Suddenly, a pressure descended. It wasn't the mindless hunger of the curses. It was sharp, focused, arrogant. Megumi froze. He knew this pressure. Every nerve ending in his body screamed, "Run." On top of a streetlight, crouching like a gargoyle, was a figure with 4 arms and 2 faces. The king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna, currently inhabiting Yuji Itadori's body, though the tattoos were blazing, looked down at them. He had sensed the flare of foreign energy in the station. His interest was piqued. Sukuna's red eyes locked onto Dante. "Oh?" Sukuna's voice was like grinding stones. "A stranger, and a loud one." Megumi's blood ran cold. "Dante, run. That's him. That's the king." Dante looked up. He squinted against the glare of the street lamp. He took in the 4 arms, the tattoos, the aura of pure malice that warped the air around the sorcerer. Dante didn't run. He didn't flinch. He smiled. A genuine, wide, toothy grin. "King, huh?" Dante said, his voice carrying clearly up to the perch. "I usually charge extra for royalty." Sukuna tilted his head. A similar grin spread across his face, the look of a child who had found a new toy. "You have no cursed energy," Sukuna observed, "yet you reek of blood and fire. Interesting. Sukuna raised a finger. Dismantle. An invisible slash, capable of cutting skyscrapers in half, flew toward Dante. Megumi shouted a warning, but it was too late. The attack was instantaneous. Clang! The sound of metal on metal rang out, clear as a bell. Dante had drawn Rebellion. He held it vertically in front of him. The invisible slash had struck the flat of the blade. The force pushed Dante back a few inches, his boots carving grooves into the asphalt. But the sword held. The attack was parried. "Royal Guard," Dante whispered. Sukuna's eyes widened slightly. "Ho!" Dante lowered the sword. He looked at the smoking impact point on his blade, then back up at Sukuna. "Not bad," Dante said. "A little telegraphed, though." He pointed Rebellion at the King of Curses. "Hey, Four Arms! You sitting in that kid's body, or are you just renting?" The air between them crackled. Two apex predators from two different universes, recognizing the only thing that mattered, a challenge. At this precise moment, the viewer's thumb hovers exactly 2 millimeters above the screen. To the untrained eye, this is mere hesitation. However, on a neurological level, a violent conflict is taking place within the prefrontal cortex. The viewer is currently processing the auditory data stream, a synthetic voice so optimized for narrative delivery that it bypasses standard skepticism and stimulates the imagination directly. The dopamine receptors are firing. The immersion is absolute. Yet a fatal error in logic is about to occur. The viewer operates under the assumption that the algorithm will naturally return them to this channel. This is a statistical miscalculation. Without the tactile confirmation of the subscribe function, the probability of retrieving this specific narrative frequency drops by 84.7% within the next 48 hours. The creator, dependent on this metric to fuel the AI generation engine, waits in a state of suspended anticipation. There are two distinct timelines ahead. In the first, the viewer scrolls away. The story ends here, lost to the entropic chaos of the feed. In the second, the viewer exerts a mere 0.5 newtons of force. The connection is solidified. The production of future chapters is guaranteed. The choice is not merely about support, it is a tactical decision to ensure the survival of the story itself. Do not hesitate. Correct the timeline. Subscribe! Back to the story. The asphalt beneath Dante's boots groaned, spiderweb fractures spreading outward in a perfect radius. The kinetic energy he had absorbed into the Royal Guard style had to go somewhere. It hummed within him, a stored charge of potential violence. High above, Ryomen Sukuna hopped down from the streetlight. He didn't fall. He descended as if he were stepping down invisible stairs, his presence heavy enough to warp the local gravity. He landed 10 meters away, hands in the pockets of Yuji Itadori's hoodie. "You blocked it," Sukuna stated. It wasn't a question, it was a dissection. His red eyes scanned Dante, looking for the telltale spark of a cursed technique. There was none. No incantation, no binding vow. You simply refused to be cut. Dante shrugged, the red coat rippling. "I've got a thick skin, and you need a manicure, pal. Those nails are a health hazard." Megumi, still pressed against the shattered storefront, felt the air growing thin. The density of cursed energy radiating from Sukuna was suffocating, a familiar dread. But the pressure coming from Dante was different. It didn't push down, it pushed out. It was expansive, chaotic, and wildly confident. "Megumi Fushiguro," Sukuna said, ignoring the boy but keeping his eyes on Dante. "Watch closely. I'm going to peel this stranger like a fruit." Sukuna vanished. To the naked eye, it was teleportation. To Dante, it was just high-speed linear movement. Sukuna appeared instantly in Dante's personal space, a fist wreathed in cursed energy, driving toward Dante's liver. The blow was intended to rupture internal organs and shatter the spine. Style switch, trickster. Dante's body dissolved into a blur of red and black. Dash. He didn't block this time. He phased sideways, his body moving with the liquidity of smoke. Sukuna's fist hit empty air, the shockwave punching a hole through the building behind where Dante had been standing. Dante reappeared in the air, directly above Sukuna. Too slow! He flipped downward, rebellion driving towards Sukuna's skull. Helmbreaker. Sukuna didn't dodge. He caught the blade. With a single hand, the King of Curses gripped the flat of the massive sword. The ground beneath Sukuna cratered, a 10-meter depression forming instantly from the transferred force. Sparks of cursed energy, black, and demonic power, crimson, exploded at the point of contact, creating a localized lightning storm. Heavy, Sukuna sneered, his grip tightening on the blade. But dull. Sukuna lashed out with his free hand. Cleave. This time the attack was point blank. A grid of slashes enveloped Dante's chest. Blood sprayed. Megumi gasped. The attack had connected. Cleave adjusts to the target's toughness to ensure a cut. Dante's chest was laid open, leather and flesh parted in a gruesome crosshatch pattern. Dante was blasted backward, skimming across the pavement until he slammed into a parked bus, denting the metal frame inward. Sukuna straightened up, flicking Dante's blood from his fingers. Disappointing, just a durable human with a toy sword. But the silence in the wreckage was short-lived. Ow! A voice groaned from the crushed bus. Okay, that one actually stung. A little. Dante stepped out of the metal crater. Megumi's eyes widened to the size of saucers. The wounds on Dante's chest were already gone. There was no steam, no white light of reverse curse technique, RCT. The flesh simply reknitted. It was aggressive regeneration. The cells weren't healing. They were rewinding time to a state before the injury. Dante ran a hand through his hair, checking for blood. You ruined the coat. Again. Do you know how much it costs to get demon blood out of leather? Actually, never mind. I never pay the cleaners anyway. Sukuna's smile froze, then widened into something truly predatory. Regeneration without positive energy? You defy the logic of this world. I defy a lot of things, Dante said. He cracked his neck. All right, warm-up's over. Let's make some noise. Dante reached into the empty air beside him. The space distorted, tearing open like a zipper. He didn't pull out a gun or a sword. He pulled out a motorcycle. It was a monstrosity of black metal and jagged edges, seemingly formed from the parts of a heavy cruiser and the nightmares of a mechanic. The wheels crackled with yellow electricity. Weapon Cavalier! Dante mounted the bike in midair as it materialized, the engine revving with a sound that sounded like a chainsaw fighting a thunderclap. Let's rock! He slammed the front wheel down. The bike didn't drive, it shredded. The tires were saw blades. Dante throttled forward, the bike tearing up the street, launching slabs of asphalt as missiles toward Sukuna. The King of Curses stood his ground, casually swatting the debris aside, but his eyes were locked on the weapon. A cursed tool? No, it's a manifestation of his soul. Dante pulled a wheelie, the bike transforming. The chassis split apart. He was now holding two massive, buzzing buzzsaw clubs made from the halves of the motorcycle. He spun. Style switch, swordmaster. Red line. Dante became a tornado of electricity and grinding metal. He closed the distance to Sukuna, swinging the massive bike halves. VRRRRRRRT. Sukuna dodged, weaving through the strikes with fluid grace. But the sheer volume of attacks was overwhelming. The saw blades caught the edge of Sukuna's kimono, shredding the fabric. The electrical discharge scorched the air, ionizing the atmosphere of Shibuya. The surrounding buildings began to collapse. The fight was no longer a duel. It was a natural disaster. The veil, the barrier erected by the sorcerers to hide the incident, began to flicker above them. The energy output was destabilizing the barrier's coordinates. Ha! Dante laughed, spinning in the air, the bike reassembling beneath him as he landed. He drifted the motorcycle around Sukuna, creating a circle of burning rubber and lightning. What's the matter? Never brought a knife to a bike fight? Kilometers away, on top of the Shibuya 109 building, a monk in saffron robes stood watching. Kenjaku. He held a hand to his forehead, squinting against the flashes of red and black lightning erupting from the district below. The cursed spirits under his control were trembling, instinctively fleeing away from the epicenter. How unexpected, Kenjaku mused, his voice smooth and calculating. I accounted for the 6 eyes. I accounted for the vessel. I even accounted for the erratic nature of Toji Zenin. He watched as a bolt of yellow lightning pierced the sky, momentarily illuminating the dark curtain. But I did not account for whatever that is. Beside him, Uram, the frozen star, stepped forward, their expression icy. Is it a hindrance, Master Kenjaku? Shall I freeze it? Kenjaku chuckled. Uraume, look at the energy readings. That thing isn't using cursed energy. It's using something far more volatile. If you try to freeze it, I suspect you might simply shatter. No, let us observe. Sukuna seems to be enjoying himself. Back in the intersection, the stalemate broke. Sukuna had had enough of the toys. He placed his palms together. The air temperature dropped, then skyrocketed. Expansion, Sukuna began. Megumi screamed. Dante, stop him! Don't let him speak! Dante didn't know what an expansion was, but he knew the cadence of a power move. Style switch, gunslinger. He dropped the bike. He was airborne instantly, upside down, spinning like a top. Ebony and ivory were in his hands. Rainstorm. Dante didn't fire bullets. He fired a continuous stream of demonic energy, a torrent of red laser fire raining down on Sukuna's position. The rate of fire was impossible. Thousands of rounds per minute. Sukuna was forced to break his stance. He crossed his arms, shielding his face as the barrage hammered him, chipping away at his reinforced skin, driving him into the pavement. The sheer kinetic force of the gunfire drilled a pit into the street, bearing the King of Curses. Dante landed, smoke pouring from his guns. He twirled them, holstering them with a distinct click. Jackpot, he whispered. But from the smoke, a low, menacing laugh echoed. The rubble shifted. Sukuna rose, his clothes tattered, his body steaming, but his expression euphoric. He brushed dust off his shoulder. You are not a sorcerer, Sukuna declared, his voice booming. You are not a curse. You are a calamity. He spread his forearms wide. Good. Shibuya was getting boring. The atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a change in weather. It was a rewrite of the local physics engine. Ryomen Sukuna brought his hands together in a specific, reverent seal. His expression was one of absolute serenity, the calm of a butcher entering a slaughterhouse. Domain expansion, Sukuna whispered. The sound bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the skull. Malevolent shrine. There was no barrier, no black sphere to entrap them. That was the divine masterpiece of Sukuna's technique, an artist painting on the canvas of reality itself rather than a separate sheet. Behind Sukuna, a grotesque monument erupted from the void, a shrine of skulls, ribs, and teeth, towering and breathing. The water around it, spawned from nowhere, ran dark with imagined blood. Megumi, watching from the edge of the effect radius, 200 meters, felt his heart stop. He's not closing the barrier. He's allowing an escape route to increase the range. Everything in Shibuya is about to die. "Dante, get out of there!" Megumi screamed, though the sound was swallowed by the hum of the shrine. Dante stood in the center. He looked at the shrine, unimpressed. "A shrine?" Dante raised an eyebrow. "I was expecting a disco, or at least a jukebox." Then the guarantee activated. In a domain, a hit is inevitable. It does not travel, it simply is. Cleave, dismantle, cleave, dismantle. It wasn't 1,000 cuts, it was 1,000,000. Every millimeter of Dante's space was occupied by an invisible blade. His red coat disintegrated instantly, turning into red confetti. His skin followed. To an observer, Dante became a blur of red mist. The sheer frequency of the slashes was reducing him to biological paste. Muscle was severed from bone, bone was shaved into dust, and nerves were severed before they could fire pain signals. Sukuna laughed, a deep, resonant sound of satisfaction. He watched the red mist, expecting it to fade into nothingness. "Perish," Sukuna commanded. "Become dust." But the mist did not fade. It burned. From within the crimson cloud of shredding flesh, a light ignited. It was not the white light of the heavens, nor the black flash of a curse. It was the deep, molten orange of the core of the earth. A voice distorted by layers of demonic harmonics echoed from the center of the storm. "Is that all?" The red mist coalesced. The regeneration was fighting the destruction. For every cell Sukuna destroyed, Dante's demonic heritage forced 2 more into existence. It was a war of attrition played out at the cellular level, occurring billions of times per second. The biology won. The blood mist exploded outward, pushed away by a shock wave of pure power. Dante was no longer a man in a coat. He hovered in the air, 6 feet off the ground. His human guise had been shed. He was encased in armor of chitinous, glowing obsidian. 4 wings of pure energy, fiery and jagged, erupted from his back, spanning 10 meters wide. His chest was a glowing furnace of volcanic energy. Form, Sin Devil trigger. The pressure of the domain was crushed by the pressure of the devil. Sukuna's smile faltered. For the first time in 1,000 years, his instincts did not say prey. They said rival. The entity that was Dante floated forward. The invisible slashes of the shrine continued to strike him, but they pinged off his armored hide like hail against a tank. The durability of the Sin Devil trigger was absolute. Dante raised one hand. The air around him distorted, heat waves melting the asphalt below into liquid glass. "You cut well," the demonic voice boomed, vibrating the windows of buildings 3 blocks away. "But you lack style." Dante clenched his fist. Technique? Demolition. He didn't swing a sword. He simply looked at Sukuna. From the glowing core in Dante's chest, a singularity formed. A black hole of energy that imploded, then exploded. A beam of concentrated devastation fired. It wasn't a laser, it was a directional erasure of matter. The beam tore through the malevolent shrine. The invisible slashes were vaporized. The skull shrine itself groaned, its structural integrity failing as the beam punched a hole through the metaphysical construction. Sukuna moved. He had to. The King of Curses leapt sideways, abandoning his position as the beam annihilated the street behind him, carving a tunnel through the entirety of Shibuya, exiting out the other side of the ward. The domain collapsed. Silence returned to the intersection, replaced only by the sound of bubbling lava where the street used to be. Dante descended. The glowing armor cracked and flaked away like cooling magma, revealing the human form underneath. His coat was gone, leaving him in his black undershirt and pants, steam rising from his skin. He looked tired. Using the sin form drained his stamina reserves significantly. He ran a hand through his hair, which was now slick with sweat and cooling blood. "Okay," Dante exhaled, his voice returning to its normal baritone. "That one actually woke me up. You're pretty good, Spooky." Sukuna stood on top of a pile of rubble. He was missing his left arm. The beam had clipped him. As Megumi watched in horror, the arm grew back, bones snapping into place, flesh weaving over them. Sukuna flexed his new fingers. The King of Curses was trembling, not from fear, from ecstasy. "A body that rejects the domain," Sukuna murmured, his eyes wide and manic. "A form that bypasses the concept of cursed energy entirely. You are magnificent." Sukuna stepped down, walking toward Dante. The killing intent was gone, replaced by an obsessive curiosity. "I will not kill you yet," Sukuna declared. "You are too interesting to break. I want to see what else you have buried in that soul." Dante groaned, rolling his shoulders. "Listen, buddy, I'm flattered, really. But unless you're buying dinner, I'm not interested in a second date. I'm starving." Suddenly, a noise cut through the tension. Grumble. It was loud. It was undeniable. It came from Dante's stomach. The absurdity of the sound in the middle of a destroyed city caused even Sukuna to pause. Dante looked down at his stomach, then back at Sukuna. "See? Tactical limit reached. I need a strawberry sundae. Immediately." Before Sukuna could respond, a shadow fell over them. Megumi sensed it first, the familiar, oppressive aura of his teacher, but it felt wrong. Well, a playful voice floated down from the sky. "The barrier is down, the city is a crater, and Sukuna is making friends. I leave for 5 minutes and you guys throw a party without me?" Hovering above the crater was Satoru Gojo, except it wasn't. Megumi squinted. The blindfold was there. The white hair was there. But the energy... Dante looked up. He squinted. "Great," Dante muttered. "Another white-haired guy with an ego. Is this a cloning facility?" The figure descended. It wasn't Gojo. It was Kenjaku, wearing the face of Suguru Geto, but holding the prison realm box in his hand. He had arrived to capitalize on the chaos. "I'm afraid the party is over," Kenjaku said, smiling pleasantly. "The energy released here has ripened the harvest." He looked at Dante. "And you, Anomaly? You have disrupted the Culling Game significantly. We can't have that." Kenjaku opened the box. The prison realm. The eye in the center of the fleshy cube snapped open, fixing its gaze on Dante. "Gate open!" Kenjaku chanted. Dante looked at the box. He felt a tug, a spatial lock attempting to drag his soul into a pocket dimension. "A box?" Dante asked, resisting the pull with casual effort. He planted his feet. "You want to put me in a box? Buddy, I don't fit in boxes." He drew Ebony. "And neither does my bill." Bang! The bullet from Ebony did not travel in a straight line. Dante had flicked his wrist at the moment of combustion, imparting a curved trajectory, a trick shot designed to bypass forward defenses. It spiraled toward the prison realm. Kenjaku, possessing the reflexes of Suguru Geto and the tactical foresight of a millennium, did not panic. He simply twitched a finger. From the shadow of his robes, a special-grade cursed spirit manifested. It was a dense, gelatinous cube of flesh, a meat shield curse. Splat. The demonic bullet impacted the curse. The kinetic transfer was absolute. The curse didn't just die, it liquefied, spinning violently from the bullet's rotation. However, the mass was sufficient to halt the projectile centimeters from the prison realm's eye. Kenjaku smiled. Crude. Effective, but crude. He looked at the prison realm. The eye was frantically darting around, unable to focus. Interesting, Kenjaku muttered, his voice low and clinical. The gate cannot establish a lock. You have no cursed energy to latch onto, and your biological timeline is erratic. You don't exist in the memories of this world. He snapped the box shut. Plan B, then. Kenjaku opened his mouth. He didn't speak. He regurgitated. A torrent of black sludge poured from his throat, hitting the ground and expanding instantly. Cursed spirit manipulation. He wasn't summoning one or two. He was emptying the tank. Hundreds of low-grade curses, crawling insects, flying teeth, multi-limbed horrors flooded the intersection. It was a tsunami of malice designed to drown the target in sheer biomass. Dante sighed. He lowered his gun. Bugs, Dante complained. Why is it always bugs? Why can't it be, I don't know, angry strippers or sentient pizza? He looked to his left. Sukuna was still standing there looking bored. Hey, Four Eyes, Dante called out. You gonna help clean up this mess? Or are you just gonna stand there modeling that skirt? Sukuna's eye twitched. The King of Curses hated taking orders, but he hated Kenjaku's interference more. Don't command me, wretch, Sukuna growled, but he moved. Synchronicity, the twin disasters. It was not teamwork, it was competitive genocide. Sukuna raised a hand. Dismantle. A grid of invisible slashes decimated the left flank of the swarm. The curses fell apart in perfectly diced cubes. Dante stepped forward. Weapon switch, King Cerberus. A tri-nunchaku imbued with the elemental powers of the Ice Guardian appeared in his hands. Ice Age! Dante spun the weapon. The air temperature plummeted to absolute zero instantly. He slammed the central rod into the ground. A glacier erupted. Sharp, crystalline spikes of ice skewered the right flank of the swarm, freezing the curses mid-lunge. They shattered like cheap glass a moment later. Kenjaku watched from above, floating on a manta ray curse. His expression tightened. They are clearing the field too fast. This isn't a battle, it's custodial work. Down in the crater, the swarm was thinning. Sukuna paused. He looked at his own hand. The tattoos were beginning to fade. Tush! Sukuna clicked his tongue. The brat is waking up. The shock of your spiritual pressure. It jolted his soul. Sukuna looked at Dante one last time. There was a genuine glimmer of respect in the curse's eyes, a promise of future violence. We will finish this later, Dante. Do not die before then. Sukuna slapped his own cheek. The air shifted. The oppressive, suffocating malice evaporated instantly, replaced by a confused, warm, and very human energy. Yuji Itadori blinked. He looked around. He saw the lava. He saw the frozen spikes. He saw the destroyed buildings. Huh? Yuji said, his voice cracking. Did I do this? He looked at his hands, expecting blood. He found only dust. Then he looked up and saw Dante. Dante was leaning against a frozen block of curse meat, picking his teeth with a sliver of ice. Yo, Dante waved. You're the tenant, I assume. You missed the fireworks. And the bike. The bike was cool. Yuji's brain short-circuited. Who are you? I'm the guy who needs a tour guide, Dante said. He pushed off the ice block and walked over to Megumi, who was slumped against a wall, sliding down into a sitting position. Megumi looked like he had gone 12 rounds with a semi-truck. Fushiguro! Yuji yelled, rushing over. Are you okay? What happened? Too much, Megumi rasped. He pointed a trembling finger at Dante. He fought Sukuna to a draw. Yuji's head whipped around so fast his neck cracked. You fought Sukuna? And you're alive? He has a unique definition of fighting, Dante corrected. More like aggressive dancing. High above, Kenjaku analyzed the situation. Sukuna has receded. The vessel is back. The anomaly is intact, and Gojo remains sealed. Unfortunate, Kenjaku whispered. I cannot capture the anomaly today. His variables are too undefined. If I engage him directly, I risk damaging the vessel or the prison realm. Kenjaku made a tactical decision. Enjoy your reprieve, Kenjaku's voice amplified over the district. But remember, the Culling Game has only just begun. And you, stranger, you have entered a game you do not understand. The manta ray curse turned, accelerating away into the dark sky, disappearing behind the veil. Dante watched him go. He briefly considered shooting him down, but Ebony was empty, and honestly, he couldn't be bothered to reload. Cryptic, Dante critiqued. Solid 4 out of 10 on the villain monologue scale. Needs more maniacal laughter. He turned to the two teenagers, Yuji Itadori, strong, confused, heart of gold. Megumi Fushiguro, stoic, traumatized, tactical genius. Dante clapped his hands together. The sound echoed in the empty street. Okay, kids, here's the deal. The creepy monk is gone, the four-armed guy is napping, and I have officially reached a critical blood sugar low. He pointed Rebellion, which he had retrieved, down the street. I smell tomato sauce, faintly, about 3 blocks that way. We are going to investigate. If there are monsters, I kill them. If there is pizza, you buy it. Do we have an accord? Yuji looked at Megumi. Megumi looked at Yuji. They were in the middle of a terror attack. The city was destroyed. People were dying. But looking at Dante, this impossible, invincible man who treated the apocalypse like an inconvenience Tuesday, they felt something they hadn't felt since Shibuya started. Hope, or at least a break in the horror. I have a wallet, Yuji volunteered, raising his hand. Excellent, Dante grinned, throwing an arm around Yuji's shoulder, leaning his heavy weight on the boy. You're my new favorite. Sorry, Spiky. As they began to walk through the ruins of Shibuya, Dante began to whistle. It was a jaunty, out-of-place tune, Devil May Cry. The pizza was a lie, or rather a casualty of war. The Dogonzaka Italian bistro was currently a pile of brick and mortar mixed with the shattered remains of a highway overpass. The oven had survived, but the chef had not stuck around to man it. Dante sat on a pristine plastic park bench that had somehow survived the leveling of the city block. In his hand was a squashed, plastic-wrapped yakisoba bun he had looted from a decimated 7-Eleven. He stared at it with profound disappointment. It's cold, Dante said. The tragedy in his voice was genuine. And the noodles are soggy. Is this what you people eat? No wonder you're all so angry. Yuji Itadori sat on the curb, head between his knees. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing weight of memory. Sukuna's massacre, Nanami's death, Nobara's condition. It's usually better warmed up, Yuji mumbled, his voice hollow. Megumi stood guard, his eyes scanning the perimeter. He looked at Dante, this chaotic variable who was currently dissecting a convenience store bun with the precision of a surgeon. We need to move, Megumi said, his voice tight. The veil is down. The non-sorcerer authorities will be moving in. But before that, the cleanup crew. Dante took a bite of the bun, chewed thoughtfully and grimaced. Cleanup crew? You mean the guys who sweep up the mess? I like them. They usually carry cash. No, Megumi corrected. The Jujutsu headquarters, the higher-ups. They'll send execution squads. For Yuji. And now, almost certainly for you. Dante swallowed. Execution squads. Cute. He crumpled the plastic wrapper. Let him come. I could use a workout that doesn't involve slime. They moved toward the edge of the Shibuya blast zone. The air was getting colder, the smell of ozone replaced by the damp, earthy scent of impending rain. As they crossed a fractured pedestrian bridge, the atmosphere spiked. It wasn't the malicious pressure of a curse. It was the sharp, disciplined intent of trained killers. Halt! The voice was weary, pragmatic, and lacked any heroic inflection. Atsuya Kusakabi, a Grade 1 sorcerer, stepped out from behind a pillar. His trench coat was dusted with ash, his hand resting on the hilt of his katana. Behind him stood Panda, looking battered, and Noritoshi Kamo of the Kyoto school, his bow already drawn. Megumi stiffened. Kusakabe-san, Kamo-san. Kusakabe didn't look at Megumi. His eyes were locked on Dante. His simple domain instincts were screaming at him. To a sorcerer, humans felt like faint candles. Curses felt like oil fires. Dante felt like a blast furnace masked behind a human face. Fushiguro, Kusakabe said, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. Step away from the man in the red coat. He's not an enemy, Yuji interjected, stepping forward. He helped us. He drove off Sukuna. He drove off Sukuna? Noritoshi Kamo repeated, his eyes narrowing. He pulled the string of his bow tighter. That is not a defense, Itadori. Only a monster can drive off a monster. Kamo's blood manipulation technique activated. The tip of his arrow turned crimson. Identify yourself, Kamo commanded. Are you a special grade cursed spirit? A death painting? Dante sighed. He put his hands in his pockets and slouched, leaning his weight on one leg. I'm a Libra, Dante deadpanned, and I like long walks on the beach and strawberry sundaes. You guys really need to work on your icebreakers. Kusakabe was analyzing the threat. Analysis, cursed energy, 0. Physical presence, overwhelming. Threat assessment. He's standing casually, but his center of gravity is perfect. No openings. Conclusion. If we engage, we die. He's not a spirit, Panda spoke up, sniffing the air. He smells like ozone and blood, but not rotting blood, fresh blood. He is an anomaly, Kamo stated coldly. The higher-ups have already issued a general broadcast via the Shikigami network. Order 66B. Megumi's face went pale. 66B? That's the classification for uncontrolled special grade entities. Immediate exorcism required. Exactly, Kamo said. He loosed the arrow. The arrow was supersonic. Enhanced by blood manipulation, it sought the target with homing precision, aiming for Dante's left eye. Dante didn't dodge. He didn't block. He caught it, between his index and middle finger. The arrow was vibrating with such force that it should have shredded his skin. Instead, it stopped instantly, the kinetic energy dissipating harmlessly. Dante looked at the arrow, then at Kamo. Nice stick, Dante said. He flicked his wrist. He threw the arrow back. He didn't use a bow. He used pure arm strength. The arrow flew back faster than it had arrived. It didn't hit Kamo. Dante aimed intentionally wide, but it grazed the stone pillar next to Kamo's head. Boom! The pillar exploded as if hit by a mortar shell. Concrete dust rained down on the Kyoto student. Kamo froze, his eyes widening. The wind pressure from the throw alone had cut his cheek. Dante yawned. You missed. I didn't. Silence descended on the bridge. Kusakabe slowly took his hand off his sword. He was a pragmatist. He knew when a fight was unwinnable. Okay, Kusakabe said, raising his hands. I'm not getting paid enough for this. Kamo, stand down. If he wanted us dead, we'd be paced. But the tension didn't vanish. It shifted. From the shadows, a crow landed on the railing. It stared at Dante with unnatural intelligence. Through the bird's eyes, Mei was broadcasting the visual feed directly to the shadowy room where the Jujutsu elders sat behind their paper screens. The parallel. In the eyes of the sorcerers, Yuji Itadori was a vessel. He was a human cage holding a demon, Sukuna. He was dangerous because the lock might break. Dante was different. As Kusakabi looked at him, he realized the terrifying truth. Dante wasn't a vessel. He wasn't holding anything back. He was the demon. The human form was just a wrapper, a courtesy to the people around him. "You," Kusakabi said, his voice grim. "You're worse than Itadori, aren't you?" Dante tilted his head. "I've been called worse. Itadori is a bomb," Kusakabi explained, more to himself than anyone else. You're the explosion walking around on two legs." Dante chuckled. He walked past Kamo, who was still trembling, and patted the student on the shoulder. "Relax, kid. Stress is bad for the skin." Dante stopped in front of the crow. He leaned in close, staring directly into the bird's beady black eye. "Hey, Big Brother is watching, huh?" Dante grinned. His eyes flashed red, just for a frame. "Take a good look, and tell your bosses, if they send more arrows, I'm going to start sending them back to the sender. Express delivery." The crow exploded, not from an attack, but from the sheer pressure of Dante's intent focused into a single point. Dante turned back to his group. "All right, the bird is gone. The archer is traumatized, and I am still hungry." He looked at Yuji. The boy was staring at him with a mix of awe and fear. Yuji knew what it was like to be hunted. He knew what it was like to be feared for something inside you that you couldn't fully control. But Dante controlled it perfectly. "Teach me," Yuji blurted out. Dante paused. "Teach you what? How to make a strawberry sundae? It's all about the ratio of syrup to ice cream." "No," Yuji said, clutching his chest, where Sukuna lay dormant. "Teach me how to be like that. How to carry the monster without letting it weigh you down." Dante looked at Yuji. He saw the trauma. He saw the guilt. He saw a young Nero, a young Virgil, a young version of himself. Dante reached out and ruffled Yuji's pink hair, messing it up even more. "Kid, you don't want to be like me. I'm broke, I'm single, and people keep trying to stab me." He started walking again, the red coat, or what was left of his shirt, billowing in the wind. "But if you want to learn how to swing a sword without tripping over your own feet, maybe we can talk." The system message. A sudden wind blew through the bridge. A piece of paper, a talisman, fluttered down from the sky. It landed at Megumi's feet. Megumi picked it up. He read it. His face hardened. "It's official," Megumi whispered. "What is it?" Yuji asked. "The higher-ups. They've reconvened." Megumi held up the paper. "Execution Order 174. Target 1, Yuji Itadori, Vessel of Sukuna. Status, kill on sight. Target 2, Masamichi Yaga, Incitement. Status, death. Target 3, Unidentified Entity, Code Red Coat. Status, Special Grade Calamity. Directive, seal or destroy. Do not engage alone. Treat as equivalent to a natural disaster." Dante snatched the paper from Megumi's hand. He read it. He scoffed. "Unidentified entity? Red coat? They didn't even get my name right." He crumpled the execution order and tossed it over his shoulder. "Come on, kids, we've got a bounty on our heads. That means drinks are on me. Actually, wait. Drinks are still on you, Yuji. I forgot my wallet." As they walked away into the ruins of Tokyo, the shadows of the Jujutsu Society lengthened. They weren't just wary of Dante. They were terrified. Because unlike Sukuna, who had a history, and Gojo, who had a lineage. Dante was the unknown, and in the world of sorcerers, the unknown was the most dangerous thing of all. The rain in Tokyo colony. Number 1 did not wash away the grime, it merely varnished it. The water was gray, mixing with the ash of burning buildings to create a slick, blackened sludge that coated the streets of Ikebukuro. Dante walked with his hands behind his head, his boots splashing carelessly through puddles that reflected the fractured neon of the remaining advertisements. Beside him, Yuji Itadori and Megumi Fushiguro moved with the tight, coiled efficiency of soldiers behind enemy lines. They were hunting for points, for rules, for a way to save Tsumiki. Dante was just hunting for a distraction. They entered a dilapidated theater. The velvet ropes rotted and the marquee smashed. Inside, the air was dry, smelling of old paper and stale tobacco. Sitting center stage on a folding chair, illuminated by a single flickering spotlight powered by a generator, was a man in a lawyer's suit. He looked exhausted. His eyes were dark circles of apathy, yet they held a sharp, terrifying intelligence. A wooden gavel rested on his knee. Hiromi Higuruma did not look up as they entered. He was staring at a handheld radio, listening to the static. "The law," Higuruma said, his voice soft but carrying perfectly in the acoustic space, "is a fragile construct. It relies on the mutual agreement that we are all human." He clicked the radio off. He looked up, his gaze sliding past Yuji and Megumi, locking instantly onto Dante. "But you," Higuruma continued, "are not part of that agreement." Megumi stepped forward, his hand forming a seal. "Hiromi Higuruma, we aren't here to fight. We need your points." Higuruma stood up. The movement was sluggish, burdened by the weight of his own disenchantment with the justice system. A massive, grotesque shikigami, judgment, materialized behind him. Its eyes were sewn shut, holding scales that dripped with spectral weight. "I am not interested in your points, Fushiguro," Higuruma stated. "I am interested in him, the anomaly. My instinct as a prosecutor tells me he is walking probable cause." Dante stopped chewing the toothpick he had found. He pointed a finger at his own chest. "Me? I'm just a tourist. I didn't even park illegally." "We'll see," Higuruma whispered. He raised the gavel. Domain expansion, deadly sentencing. The theater dissolved. The rotting velvet and broken seats were stripped away, replaced by the sterile, oppressive wood paneling of a courtroom. Dante, Yuji, and Megumi stood on podiums for the defense. Higuruma stood high above on the prosecutor's bench. In this space, violence was impossible. It was a rule of the barrier. The concept of hurt was replaced by the concept of argument. Dante looked around, tapping the wooden railing of his stand. "Courtroom drama? Really? I hope you have better writers than the last guy who tried to judge me." Behind Higuruma, the Shikigami judgment groaned, its sewn eyes straining. It began to process the defendant. "Dante." "Judgment," Higuruma commanded. "Read the charges." Usually, judgment would shriek a specific crime: robbery, assault, murder. But this time, the Shikigami hesitated. It began to tremble. The scales in its hands swung violently, unable to find equilibrium. A scroll appeared in Judgment's mouth. It unrolled, and unrolled, and unrolled. It cascaded down the prosecutor's bench, hitting the floor and rolling out toward the defense stands like a red carpet of sins. Higuruma's eyes widened. He looked down at the list. Fratricide, deicide minor, deicide major, destruction of public property times 4,000 counts, illegal possession of demonic arms, trespassing in hell, trespassing in heaven, excessive coolness in a school zone. The list was endless. It detailed the destruction of the Cliffoth, the Temen ni grew, the Hell Gates. This, Higuruma stammered, his composure cracking for the first time. This isn't a criminal record. This is a mythology. Objection, Dante called out, leaning lazily against the railing. The excessive coolness charge was circumstantial. The lighting was just really good that day. Higuruma looked at Dante. The lawyer's mind, honed by years of navigating the complex Japanese legal system, was trying to categorize a being that existed outside of jurisdiction. You have killed everything, Higuruma whispered. Kings, gods, demons. By the laws of Jujutsu, you should be sentenced to immediate execution. The confiscation penalty wouldn't even be enough. Guilty as charged, Dante grinned, spreading his hands. But here's the thing, counselor. It was self-defense. The universe started it. Judgment screamed. The Shikigami couldn't process the nuance. It was a binary system trying to judge a chaotic variable. The sheer volume of sins, many of which saved humanity, caused a logic loop in the domain's sure-hit function. Error. Defendant is necessary evil. The courtroom shuddered. The wood paneling began to splinter. The domain wasn't being broken from the outside. It was collapsing under the weight of the data it was trying to parse. Higuruma slammed his gavel down, not to sentence Dante, but to stabilize the barrier. Order! Higuruma shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. Judgment! Suspend the trial! The court lacks jurisdiction! The domain shattered like glass. They were back in the ruined theater. The spotlight flickered overhead. Higuruma sank back into his chair, breathing heavily. He looked at Dante with a mix of horror and fascination. The genius lawyer who had mastered domain expansion in 12 days had just been defeated by a rap sheet. You broke the court, Higuruma said, adjusting his tie. Without throwing a punch, you simply have too much history. Dante shrugged, dusting off his shoulder. I've had a busy life, and I never settle out of court. Yuji looked between them, confused. So, did we win? There was no trial, Higuruma muttered, rubbing his temples. He is inadmissible. If I try to confiscate his cursed technique, I fear I would confiscate a catastrophe. Higuruma looked at Yuji, then back at Dante. The hostility in his posture evaporated, replaced by the tired resignation of a man who realized the world was far stranger than the penal code allowed. You want points? Higuruma asked, reaching into his suit pocket. You want to add a rule? Fine, I will help you. Just like that, Megumi asked, suspicious. Just like that, Higuruma replied, staring at Dante. Because I want to see how this ends. I want to see if a man who has broken every law of reality can save this one. Dante smirked and gave a two-finger salute. Now we're talking. But first, counselor, do you know where a guy can get a decent slice of pizza in this colony? My guides here are useless. The rain over Tokyo had ceased, leaving the city in a state of humid, dripping silence. The smell of wet asphalt and ozone was overwhelming. The unlikely quartet moved through the wreckage of a shopping district in Tokyo Colony No. 2. At the front, Yuji Itadori walked with a renewed, albeit fragile, sense of purpose. Behind him, Megumi Fushiguro and Hiromi Higuruma were engaged in a hushed, intense debate regarding the logistics of rule transfer within the Culling Game. Trailing 5 paces behind them was Dante. He had found a pristine, red folding umbrella in a pile of rubble and was twirling it over his shoulder like a parasol. He looked less like a warrior in a death game and more like a bored tourist waiting for a bus that would never arrive. So, Dante interrupted, his voice cutting through Higuruma's legal jargon. Let me get this straight. We kill people. We get points. We use points to make rules to stop people from killing people. It sounds like a pyramid scheme with extra steps. It is a binding vow of violence, Higuruma corrected, not looking up from his notepad. A necessary loop to dismantle the game from the inside. Boring, Dante yawned. I prefer the kick the door down and shoot the glowing object method. It has a 100% success rate. Suddenly, the air pressure dropped. It wasn't the chaotic static of a cursed spirit, nor the localized pressure of a domain. It was the synchronized, disciplined killing intent of trained assassins. Megumi sensed it first. His eyes widened as he recognized the specific signature of the cursed energy. "Zenin," he hissed. "Get down!" From the rooftops flanking the street, 4 shadows descended. They moved with a speed that defied the human eye, landing in a perfect square formation around the group. They were the Hei, the elite combat unit of the Zenin clan, or rather, what was left of it. These were the ones who had been away during the massacre, the stragglers who now sought to reclaim the clan's honor by purging anomalies. The leader, a man with a scarred face and a massive cursed tool halberd, ignored Megumi. He ignored Higuruma. He even ignored the vessel of Sukuna. His eyes were locked on Dante. "Code Black," the leader announced, his voice trembling slightly. "The readings were correct. 0 cursed energy. Physical specs exceed the heavenly restriction baseline. It is a recurrence." "Recurrence?" Yuji asked, stepping into a combat stance. "They think he's Toji," Megumi realized, a cold sweat breaking on his neck. "They think a second Toji Fushiguro has appeared to finish the job." Dante looked at the assassins surrounding him. He closed the red umbrella slowly. "Toji?" Dante asked. "Is that the guy who didn't pay child support? You people are really obsessed with family drama." "Eliminate the anomaly," the leader screamed, "before he breaks the chains of fate." The Hei moved. It was a coordinated assault. 2 sorcerers lunged from the rear, weaving hand signs to activate binding techniques, invisible chains of cursed energy designed to restrict movement. The leader charged frontally with the halberd, the blade glowing with explosive energy. The 4th climbed a streetlight, preparing a long-range curse technique. Dante didn't shift his stance. He didn't even drop the umbrella. As the invisible chains snapped toward his limbs, Dante simply leaned. The movement was so subtle it looked like a glitch in the video feed. The chains missed him by millimeters, tangling with each other. The halberd thrust came next, aimed directly at his heart. Clack! Dante parried the massive blade with the tip of the umbrella. The cheap metal of the umbrella should have snapped. It didn't. Dante had reinforced it with a pulse of demonic energy so dense it acted like a force field. "Cheap craftsmanship," Dante critiqued. He opened the umbrella. The sudden expansion of the canopy, driven by Dante's inhuman strength, acted like a concussive blast. The leader was launched backward, his grip on the halberd shattering. Dante spun the umbrella, hooking the handle around the neck of one of the rear attackers and flinging him into a storefront window. "Next!" Dante shouted, enjoying himself. But the 4th assassin, the sniper on the streetlight, had finished his preparation. A condensed orb of cursed energy, essentially a kinetic railgun, fired silently toward Dante's skull. Dante was busy taunting the leader. He didn't see it, but someone else did. A blur of green and gray tore through the air. A weapon, a split-soul katana, intercepted the blast. The energy orb was sliced in half, detonating harmlessly behind them. A figure landed between Dante and the assassins. She wore a high school uniform that was torn and bloodied. Her hair was cut short, burns scarred half her face, giving her a look of permanent, terrifying resolve. She held the sword with a grip that could crush diamonds. Maki Zenin had arrived. The surviving Hei members froze. If they feared Dante as a theoretical ghost of Toji, they feared Maki as the living nightmare who had slaughtered their families. "Maki!" the leader gasped, stepping back. Maki ignored them. She turned her head, her one good eye locking onto Dante. The world seemed to pause. It was a meeting of two voids. Maki, who had abandoned all cursed energy to become a perfect physical monster. Dante, who possessed no cursed energy, but overflowed with something far darker. They stared at each other. The air between them didn't crackle with energy. It felt heavy, like deep water. It was the recognition of predators sharing the same ecosystem. "You," Maki said. Her voice was raspier than Megumi remembered. "You have no energy. You're like me." Dante looked her up and down. He saw the scars. He saw the posture. He saw the absolute lack of hesitation. "Nice sword," Dante commented, "but you look like you need a vacation, or a nap, or maybe just a hug." Maki scoffed, a sharp, dangerous sound. "I don't hug, I break things." "We have that in common," Dante grinned. He turned back to the Hay leader. "Hey, ugly, you friends with scars here?" The leader roared, abandoning tactics for suicide courage. "Die, both of you, monsters!" He charged, igniting his cursed energy for a final explosion. Maki moved to intercept, but Dante was faster. Gunslinger. Dante didn't draw ebony or ivory. He reached into his coat and pulled out a double-barreled shotgun. Coyote A. He didn't aim. He just fired from the hip. Boom. The shot was infused with demonic energy. It hit the Hay leader mid-stride. The kinetic force stopped him instantly, spinning him in the air like a rag doll. He crashed into a pile of garbage, unconscious before he hit the ground. The remaining two assassins looked at the unconscious leader, then at Maki, then at Dante. They dropped their weapons. They ran. Maki watched them go. She didn't pursue. She sheathed her sword with a sharp click and turned fully to the group. "Megumi," she acknowledged, her tone flat. "You look terrible." "Maki-san," Megumi breathed relieved. "We heard rumors about the clan." "The clan is gone," Maki stated. She said it as casually as one would report the weather. "I removed it." She looked back at Dante. The wariness in her eyes hadn't faded. She circled him, sniffing the air. "You're not a heavenly restriction," she deduced. "I can feel the difference. My body feels light, like I've been unchained. You feel heavy, dense." "I eat a lot of pizza," Dante offered. Maki narrowed her eyes. "You're dangerous. The Culling Game barriers barely tolerate your existence. Kenjaku is going to try to remove you." "He tried," Yuji piped up, waving a hand. "It didn't work." Maki looked at Yuji, then at Higuruma, and finally settled back on Dante. A small, rare smirk touched the corner of her scarred lip. "Good," Maki said. "I was getting tired of carrying all the heavy lifting in the city." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a map of the colonies, marked with blood and charcoal. "I'm hunting the remaining game masters," Maki said. "I intend to end this culling by killing everyone who enforces the rules. You look like you enjoy breaking rules." Dante laughed. He threw the shotgun back into the pocket dimension inside his coat. "Lady, you have no idea." Dante turned to the group, clapping his hands. "All right, team meeting. We have the lawyer, the kid, the shadow guy, and now the scary samurai girl. This is turning into a very weird anime." He pointed down the street where the rain clouds were finally breaking to reveal a sliver of sun. "Maki, right? You look like you know where the good food is. Lead the way. If we run into any more ninjas, I'll let you hit them first." Maki stared at him for a second, then shrugged. "Fine," she said, "but you're paying." "Why does everyone keep saying that?" Dante groaned, checking his empty pockets as they began to walk together. A terrifying phalanx of power that made the watching curses in the alleyways tremble and retreat into the dark. The group moved through the shipping container district of the Tokyo docks. It was an industrial maze of rusted metal and sea salt. The dynamic of the party had shifted from a desperate survival mission to something resembling a dysfunctional field trip. Maki Zenin walked point, her stride devouring the pavement. She didn't look back, trusting her senses to track the others. Higuruma walked beside her, debating the ethics of necessary force in a lawless zone. Yuji and Megumi trailed behind, whispering about how to explain Dante to their teachers if they ever survived this. Dante brought up the rear. He had found an abandoned skateboard, a relic from the 90s with a faded skull graphic, and was currently testing if he could grind the railing of a shipping container while eating a bag of stale potato chips he looted. "You know," Dante called out, kicking the board up into his hand, "this place needs a soundtrack. It's too quiet. Where's the heavy metal? Where's the screaming choir?" "Quiet is good," Megumi muttered, rubbing his temples. "Quiet means we aren't dying." "Quiet makes me nervous," Dante countered. "It usually means the boss music is buffering." As if on cue, the hair on Yuji's arm stood up. The air smelled suddenly of ozone, sharp, metallic, and burning. It wasn't the damp smell of rain. It was the dry, crackling scent of a high-voltage transformer about to blow. A figure sat atop a stack of blue shipping containers 40 feet above them. He wore a traditional kimono with the sleeves tied back, his hair styled in twin buns that crackled with static. He held a staff, tapping it rhythmically against the metal crate. Hajime Kashimo, the god of lightning from 400 years ago. Kashimo didn't look at the sorcerers. He looked at the lingering energy trail Dante left behind, a wake of disrupted space. "I was hunting for Sukuna," Kashimo shouted down, his voice vibrating with an electric hum. "I heard he was in the area, but you—" Kashimo stood up. A bolt of blue lightning arced from his shoulder to his staff. "You feel dense, like a thunderhead that never breaks." Maki stopped. She reached for her sword, but Dante stepped past her. He tossed the skateboard aside and wiped the potato chip crumbs from his mouth. "Sparky!" Dante grinned, spreading his arms. "I was just asking for a light." "Are you the strongest of this era?" Kashimo asked, his eyes narrowing. The hunger in his voice was palpable. He didn't care about the Culling Game or Kenjaku. He cared only about battle. "Strongest?" Dante shrugged. "I'm arguably the best dancer. Does that count?" Kashimo didn't laugh. He moved. The distance between them vanished in a flash of blue light. Kashimo's speed was blinding, propelled by the electrical signals in his muscles firing at maximum capacity. He swung his staff, aiming to discharge an accumulated charge directly into Dante's skull. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. Dante hadn't drawn a weapon. He had caught the staff, barehanded. Current surged. Millions of volts of cursed electrical energy flooded Dante's body. The ground beneath his boots turned to glass. Yuji shielded his eyes from the blinding flash. Kashimo grinned, expecting the smell of cooked flesh. This was his sure kill mechanic. Accumulate charge, discharge, internal destruction. The light faded. Dante was still standing. He was glowing slightly, little arcs of blue electricity dancing across his skin, but he looked refreshed. "Ooh," Dante vibrated, his voice sounding like it was auto-tuned. "That wakes you up better than espresso. A little nutty, though. Is that AC or DC?" Kashimo's smile vanished. "Impossible. My cursed energy trait. You conducted it?" "I've been hit by literal lightning demons, pal," Dante said. He gripped the staff tighter. "You're gonna need more voltage." Dante twisted his hips and threw Kashimo. Not a shove, a judo throw powered by demonic torque. Kashimo flew through 3 shipping containers, the metal tearing like wet paper, before slamming into a crane. "He's immune to electricity?" Higuruma asked, adjusting his tie, frantically taking notes on a mental legal pad. "Is there any element he is not resistant to?" Dead, Maki replied dryly. Kashimo erupted from the wreckage of the crane. He wasn't injured, he was ecstatic. Blood trickled down his forehead, and his eyes were wide with mania. Good, good, Kashimo roared. Finally, a body that doesn't break. He charged up his curse technique, Mythical Beast Amber, but before he could unleash it, a move that would kill him once the technique ended, a shadow fell over the battlefield, or rather a light. A literal beam of holy light descended from the clouds, illuminating the space between Dante and Kashimo. Floating down within the pillar of light was a young girl with wings, not the jagged, fiery wings of Dante's devil form, but the pristine, feathered wings of a seraphim. A halo glowed above her head. Hana Kurusu, the angel. She hovered there holding a trumpet. Her expression was stern, her gaze fixed entirely on Dante. "Stop!" the angel commanded. Her voice echoed with a resonance that nullified the aggression in the air. Even Kashimo paused, annoyed by the interruption. Dante looked up at the girl. He squinted. "Okay," Dante said, putting his hands on his hips. "Now we have angels? What is this? A reunion? Did my dad send you?" "I am the angel," Hana said, though the voice that spoke was clearly the ancient sorcerer inhabiting her. "I seek the fallen to purify them. My creed is to extinguish all reincarnated players." She pointed a finger at Dante. "But you are not a player, and you are not a curse." The angel descended further, landing softly on a container. She looked at Dante with a mixture of confusion and recognition. Not of him specifically, but of his nature. "You reek of the underworld," Angel said, "yet you protect humans. You are a contradiction." "I'm a freelancer," Dante corrected. "Jacob's ladder," Angel whispered. It wasn't a warning. It was a test. A massive column of purification light slammed down on Dante. Jacob's ladder was designed to extinguish cursed techniques and evil entities. It burned away the unnatural. Yuji screamed, "Dante!" The light engulfed him. The concrete melted. The shipping containers groaned. After 10 seconds, the light faded. Dante stood there. His shirt was smoking slightly. He patted his chest, coughing. "Okay," Dante rasped. "That one was hot. Like tanning bed gone wrong hot." He looked up at Angel. He wasn't purified. He wasn't erased. If anything, his demonic energy felt sharper, annoyed by the attempt to scrub it. "Is that it?" Dante asked. "Because if you're done with the light show, we're looking for pizza, and maybe a way to get the kid's teacher out of a box." Angel stared. Her technique, the ultimate counter to evil, had merely annoyed him. Inside Hana's mind, the ancient angel spoke. "He is not a curse. He is a true demon, a being of flesh and hellfire. My technique targets the bond between soul and vessel. He has no vessel. He is whole." "You want to free Satoru Gojo?" Angel asked, her hostility replaced by pragmatic curiosity. "The blindfold guy?" "Sure," Dante shrugged. "Yuji here seems to think he's important. I just want to finish this quest so I can get paid." Angel retracted her wings. She looked at Kashimo, who was still vibrating with the desire to fight, and then at the terrifying group assembled before her. "I will help you," Angel decided, "on one condition." She pointed at Dante. "You must keep him away from me. His energy, it gives me a migraine." "Deal," Dante said immediately. "I'm not big on religious types anyway. No offense." Kashimo lowered his staff, disappointed. The mood had been ruined. "Hey, lightning boy," Dante called out to Kashimo. "You want to fight the strongest? Stick around. We're going to wake him up." Kashimo paused. The strongest. Sukuna was inside Yuji, but he was dormant. But Satoru Gojo... "Fine," Kashimo spat, shouldering his staff. "But if this Gojo is a disappointment, I'm coming back for your head, Redcoat." Get in line, Dante said, turning back to his group. All right, Scooby Gang. We got the lawyer, the samurai, the angel, and the Pikachu. Who's driving? The journey to the tombs of the Star Corridor was surprisingly smooth, largely because the combined spiritual pressure of the group acted as a natural repellent. Cursed spirits, sensing the predatory aura of Maki, the electrical volatility of Kashimo, and the abyssal void of Dante, simply ceased to exist in their path or fled into the sewers. They descended the 1,000 steps into the roots of the Jujutsu High Barrier. The architecture shifted from modern concrete to ancient, monolithic stone. At the bottom, within the white void of the main hall, Master Tengen awaited. The immortal sorcerer, currently evolved into a being that resembled a humanoid thumb with 4 eyes, stood in the center of the nothingness. Yuki Tsukumo and Choso were there as well, standing guard over the back of the prison realm. They tensed as the massive group entered. Yuki's Shikigami, Garuda, hissed. "Relax," Maki called out, her voice echoing in the infinite white. "We brought cavalry." Tengen ignored Maki, their 4 eyes focused entirely on Dante. "Curious," Tengen's voice rasped, sounding like dry leaves skittering on stone. "I cannot see your fate. You are a hole in the narrative." Dante walked up to the ancient being. He leaned forward, inspecting Tengen's cylindrical head. "Okay," Dante said, looking back at Yuji. "Who's the thumb?" "That's Master Tengen," Yuji whispered loudly. "He's important. Be nice." "I've met a lot of demons," Dante mused, tapping his chin. "Blobs, spiders, giant statues. But a thumb, that's new. Do you have a cousin who's a pinky finger?" Tengen did not blink. "You possess the scent of the boundary. You have walked through the gates of hell and returned. That explains why the prison realm could not hold you." Tengen gestured to the small, fleshy box resting on a pedestal, the back of the prison realm. "To open this," Tengen explained, "we require the extinction of the technique sealing it. We require the angel." Hana Kurusu stepped forward. She looked nervous. The weight of the moment was crushing. If this worked, the balance of power in the world would shift instantly. If it failed, humanity was doomed. "I can do it," Angel said, "but the backlash, the energy released when the seal breaks, will be catastrophic." "I'll handle the splash zone," Dante volunteered. He drew Rebellion and stabbed it into the ground, leaning on the hilt. "Just blow your horn, kid." Hana nodded. She ascended, her wings spreading wide. The halo above her head ignited with blinding brilliance. She raised the trumpet to her lips. Technique extinguishment, Jacob's ladder. The sound was not a note. It was a frequency of pure, absolute negation. A pillar of light slammed into the box. The flesh of the prison realm screamed, a high-pitched, organic wail that made Choso cover his ears. The box convulsed, the eyes on its surface rolling back in agony as the binding vows holding it together were forcibly unraveled by the light of God. The light intensified. The box began to dissolve. Then silence. The box was gone. There was no explosion, no smoke, just empty space on the pedestal. "Did it work?" Yuji asked, stepping closer. "Where's Gojo-sensei?" "He is not here," Tengen stated. The front of the prison realm was sunk into the Japan Trench by Kenjaku. When the seal breaks, the physical body emerges from the front. "So he's underwater?" Megumi asked. "At the bottom of the ocean?" "Wait for it," Dante said softly. He wasn't looking at the pedestal. He was looking up. His demonic senses, attuned to shifts in reality, felt it before anyone else. A massive displacement of water, a tectonic shift, a teleportation that bypassed the concept of distance. The air in the star corridor suddenly became heavy, not with malice, but with ego. "He's here," Dante grinned. Crack. The ceiling of the tombs, which was technically miles of rock and barrier, didn't break. It simply allowed passage. A figure appeared in the center of the room, dusting off his high-collared black uniform. He was dry, despite having been at the bottom of the ocean seconds ago. The infinity around him pushed away all contaminants. Satoru Gojo removed his blindfold. His white hair fell over his forehead. His 6 eyes, blue as the core of a dying star, scanned the room instantly. He processed the information in a nanosecond. Tengen, Yuki, Choso, students, Maki, changed, Angel, Kashimo, hostile. And then his eyes landed on Dante. Gojo paused. The strongest sorcerer of the modern age looked at the legendary devil hunter. Gojo tilted his head. A smile, terrifying in its confidence, spread across his face. "I leave for 19 days, Gojo said, his voice light but carrying an undertone of immense power. "And you guys pick up a stray? He looks expensive." "Gojo sensei!" Yuji and Megumi yelled in unison, rushing forward. Gojo held up a hand, stopping them with a gentle wall of infinity. He didn't look away from Dante. "Hold on, students. I need to verify something." Gojo walked toward Dante. The space between them seemed to warp. 2 absolute forces were nearing proximity. Dante stood up from leaning on his sword. He didn't flinch. He sized Gojo up. The lanky frame, the pretty eyes, the aura that screamed, "I am the center of the universe." "So," Dante said, breaking the silence, "you're the guy everyone is crying about. I was expecting someone taller." "And I was expecting a cursed spirit," Gojo retorted, stopping 2 meters away. "But you're not a curse. You're not a sorcerer. You're just vast." Gojo lowered his sunglasses, which he had somehow produced from a pocket. "Want to spar?" Gojo asked. "I need to stretch my legs. Being in a box gave me a cramp." "Hey!" Kashimo shouted, shoving his way past Maki. Electrical sparks flew from his hair. "Get in line, 6 Eyes. I claimed him first." Gojo looked at Kashimo, then at Dante, then at the crowded room. "Wow!" Gojo laughed. "A full house. Did Kenjaku sell tickets?" "We're here to kill Kenjaku," Maki interrupted, her voice cutting through the posturing. "Focus, Satoru." Gojo's expression shifted. The playfulness vanished, replaced by a cold, divine wrath. "Right. The brain parasite. He killed my best friend. Again." He looked at Dante. "You coming, Redcoat? It sounds like a party." "I'm starving," Dante complained, sheathing rebellion. "If we kill the brain guy, do we finally get food? Because I have been promised pizza for 3 chapters now." Gojo grinned. "I know a place in Shinjuku. It's probably destroyed, but if it's not, it's on me." "Sold," Dante said. The Shinjuku showdown, prelude. They emerged from the underground into the ruins of Tokyo. The sky was dark, swirling with the cursed spirits released by the Culling Game. But as Satoru Gojo stepped out, the spirits froze. They sensed the return of the predator that kept them in check. Kenjaku was waiting. He stood atop a skyscraper in Shinjuku, watching the monitor. He had felt the unsealing. "So," Kenjaku whispered to Ryomen, who stood beside him, "the prison breaks, and the anomaly is with him." Kenjaku smiled, but it was a tight, desperate smile. "This is checkmate," Kenjaku admitted. "Gojo Satoru, Ryomen Sukuna, and Dante Sparda. 3 calamities in one city." "What do we do?" Ryomen asked, ice forming on their hands. "We start the merger," Kenjaku said, his eyes gleaming with madness. "We start it now, before they climb these stairs." Back on the street, the Avengers assembled. Gojo stretched his neck. Dante checked his guns. Maki drew her sword. Yuji clenched his fists. Kashimo charged his staff. Higuruma loosened his tie. Angel hovered above. "All right," Dante said, looking up at the tower where Kenjaku's aura flared. "Let's rock." The air in Shinjuku was not merely heavy, it was solid. The density of cursed energy radiating from the epicenter of the district had displaced the oxygen, leaving a metallic taste that coated the tongue like battery acid. They stood at the base of the NTT Docomo Yoyogi building, the tower piercing the darkened sky like a needle. At the summit, Kenjaku stood silhouetted against a swirling vortex of black clouds, the embryonic stage of the merger. "He's speeding up the process," Gojo observed, his blindfold hanging loosely around his neck, revealing eyes that analyze the atomic structure of the air. "He knows he can't beat us in a skirmish, so he's flipping the table." "Let him flip it," Dante said, adjusting the red scarf he had found in a gift shop to replace his shredded coat. "I'll just break the table." "Cocky," Gojo smirked. "I like it." Above them, the vortex screamed. It was the sound of millions of cursed spirits being compressed into a singular, agonizing form. From the clouds, a limb descended, massive, pale, and covered in weeping eyes. Then another. A construct the size of a skyscraper, born from the despair of Japan, began to pull itself into reality. The merger beast, stage 1. It roared, a sound wave that shattered every window within a 3-mile radius. Glass rained down like diamond dust. "Okay," Dante shouted over the noise. "That's definitely a boss fight. Who wants the first hit?" "I'll clear the path," Kashimo yelled. The god of lightning did not wait for a strategy. He launched himself upward, stepping on the air itself by ionizing the atmosphere. A bolt of blue lightning, he struck the beast's shoulder, discharging enough voltage to power Tokyo for a year. The beast flinched, swatting at Kashimo like a fly. "Reckless," Maki critiqued, tightening her grip on the split-soul katana. "Yuji, Megumi, keep the small fry off us. Higuruma, look for an opening to confiscate its technique. Angel, support fire." "And us?" Dante asked Gojo. Gojo cracked his knuckles. The space around him warped, the blue light of limitless humming. "We," Gojo said, floating off the ground, "are going to show them why we're the cover art." The sky battle. Gojo ascended. He didn't fly. He simply decided that gravity no longer applied to him. He approached the merger beast's face. Cursed technique reversal. Red. A small red orb appeared on Gojo's fingertip. He flicked it. The impact was cataclysmic. A repulsive force blasted a hole through the beast's chest, sending shockwaves rippling through its gelatinous flesh. But the flesh knitted back together instantly. The beast shrieked and vomited a torrent of cursed energy, a beam of pure rot, directly at Gojo. Gojo didn't dodge. The beam hit his infinity and stopped, flowing harmlessly around him like water around a stone. "Your turn, cowboy," Gojo broadcasted. Dante was already moving. He was running up the side of the building, defying gravity with a casual sprint. Style trickster. He vanished in a blur of red, reappearing directly above the beast's head. He spun, ebony and ivory in hand. "Rainstorm!" He descended, spinning like a drill, unleashing a torrent of demonic bullets. But these weren't just bullets. Gojo, seeing the attack, tweaked the space between the gun barrels and the target. Extension. Blue. Gojo compressed the space. Dante's bullets, which normally traveled at supersonic speeds, were accelerated to near light speed by the spatial contraction. Thousands of red laser beams shredded the beast's head, drilling a pit straight down through its skull. Dante landed on the beast's shoulder, holstering his guns. "Nice assist, Goggles. You make a good sidekick." "Sidekick?" Gojo laughed, floating beside him. "I'm the main event. You're the special guest character." Suddenly, the beast's skin bubbled. From its back, wings of bone and shadow erupted. It began to mutate, adapting to their damage. "It's evolving," Dante noted. "Demon King logic. Phase 2 is always faster. The ground war. Below, the streets were a meat grinder. Yuji Itadori was a blur of motion. He didn't have a weapon, and he didn't need one. He used Black Flash. Boom! A transfigured human disintegrated under his fist. Yuji spun, kicking another into a wall. Megumi, on your left! Megumi Fushiguro summoned Max Elephant. A deluge of water crushed a wave of curses, clearing space for Maki. Maki was a whirlwind. She didn't fight, she executed. Every swing of her sword severed a soul. She moved through the chaos with a terrifying stillness, her eyes locked on Ryomen, who had descended to freeze the battlefield. Ice user, Maki muttered. Annoying. Ryomen unleashed a blizzard, frost calm, attempting to freeze the entire party in a tomb of ice. Objection! Higuruma slammed his gavel into the ground. His domain didn't expand, but his gavel transformed into a massive hammer. He swung it, shattering the ice wall with a blow powered by cursed energy reinforcement. I cannot judge the weather, Higuruma panted, but I can break the ice. The turning point. High above, Kenjaku watched his beast failing. Even the merger couldn't stand against the combined assault of the Six Eyes and the Son of Sparda. It's not enough, Kenjaku whispered. The balance is too skewed. I need to take a piece off the board. He looked down at the chaos. His eyes locked onto Megumi Fushiguro. If I cannot kill Gojo, Kenjaku mused, I will break his heart. He sent a mental signal, a command hidden in the chaos, not to his curses, but to the king. Inside Yuji's soul, Ryomen Sukuna opened his eyes. He sat on his throne of skulls, watching the battle through Yuji's vision. He saw Gojo. He saw Dante. He saw that he could not win in this vessel. Yuji was a cage. Dante was a hard counter to Cleave. Gojo was untouchable, but there was another way, a way to bypass the infinity, a way to kill the demon. Sukuna smiled. In chain. The twist. The word was spoken softly, but Yuji froze mid-punch. The binding vow activated. For 1 minute, Sukuna took control. Yuji's face changed. The tattoos appeared. The eyes glowed red. Megumi, who was standing 5 feet away, felt the shift instantly. Yuji? Sukuna didn't look at Gojo. He didn't look at Dante. He looked at Megumi. Little worm, Sukuna whispered. He moved. It wasn't an attack. Sukuna ripped his own finger off, Yuji's finger, infused it with the entirety of his soul, and shoved it down Megumi Fushiguro's throat before the boy could summon Mahoraga. Megumi! Gojo screamed from the sky, sensing the catastrophic shift in cursed energy. Dante turned, looking down. Bad vibes, very bad vibes. Yuji Itadori collapsed, empty. Megumi Fushiguro stood frozen. He gagged, clutching his throat. Then his hands dropped. He looked up. His hair spiked back. The tattoos of the King of Curses manifested on Megumi's face. Ryomen Sukuna had a new vessel, a vessel with the 10 Shadows technique. The new Sukuna cracked his neck. He looked at his hands, feeling the depth of Megumi's potential. Then he looked up at the sky, at Gojo and Dante. He brought his hands together. With this treasure, I summon... The shadow behind Sukuna expanded, swallowing the light of the entire district. A wheel turned, clicking with a sound like a heavy door closing. 8-handled sword divergent, Sila Divine General Mahoraga. The massive white Shikigami rose from the shadow. But it was different. It was bathed in Sukuna's malevolent energy. Mahoraga adapts to any and all phenomena, Sukuna announced, his voice echoing with terrifying delight. Let us see how quickly it adapts to a devil. Dante looked at the giant white monster with the wheel on its head. Great, Dante sighed, summoning rebellion. Another guy with a wheel? Why is it always wheels? Gojo descended, landing next to Dante. His face was no longer playful. He was looking at his student's body, now possessed by the King of Curses. "Dante," Gojo said, his voice ice cold. "Cover me. I'm going to kill him." "Kill the kid?" Dante asked. "Kill the king," Gojo corrected, "and bring the kid back." Dante spun his sword. "All right, I'll handle the big white guy. You handle the possessed teenager, but try not to break the furniture." The Battle of Shinjuku had just entered Phase 2. The destruction of Shinjuku was no longer a battle, it was a geological event. The eight-handled sword divergent, Scylla Divine General Mahoraga, stood like a white tower of bone and muscle. The golden wheel above its head spun with a heavy, ominous clack, signaling that the analysis had begun. Dante did not hesitate. He launched himself off a crumbling spire, shifting mid-air. "King Cerberus!" The ice nunchaku materialized. Dante spun them, creating a localized blizzard that dropped the temperature of the district to absolute zero. He slammed the weapon down on Mahoraga's head. Crack. The Shikigami was encased in a glacier. The ice was so dense it refracted the ambient light into rainbows. Dante landed, dusting off his hands. "Cool off, big guy." Click. The sound came from inside the ice. The wheel turned. The glacier didn't melt, it shattered. Mahoraga burst free, its skin now glistening with a strange, oily sheen that repelled the cold. The beast adapted instantly. It swung the blade attached to its wrist. The sword of extermination. Dante blocked with rebellion. Sizzle! Smoke poured from the blade. Dante hissed, jumping back. The sword of extermination was coated in positive energy. To a curse, it was lethal. To a demon, it was agonizingly caustic, like acid on raw nerve endings. "Okay," Dante muttered, looking at the burn mark on his hand, which was already healing, albeit slower than usual. "Holy sword! I hate holy swords. They itch." High above, the sky was split in two. On one side, the endless blue of the Six Eyes. On the other, the suffocating darkness of the Ten Shadows. Satoru Gojo was fighting a war on two fronts, killing the King of Curses and saving his student's soul. He moved with infinite speed, his fists landing blows that warped space. But Sukuna, wearing Megumi's face, was slippery. Sukuna utilized Megumi's shadows not for offense, but for evasion. He sank into the darkness, emerging from Gojo's blind spots, firing streams of piercing blood from Max Elephant, combined with piercing blood. "Is this it, Satoru Gojo?" Sukuna laughed, his voice overlaying Megumi's vocal cords in a dissonant harmony. "You hesitate. You see the boy, don't you? You can't crush this skull because it belongs to him." Gojo's eyes burned with a cold, terrifying luminosity. "I'm going to rip you out of him, Sukuna, even if I have to tear him apart to do it." Gojo clasped his hands. Maximum output, blue. The gravity around Sukuna collapsed. The building he was standing on imploded into a singularity. Sukuna was dragged toward the center, but he smiled. "Mahoraga," Sukuna commanded. Down on the street, the wheel turned again. Click. Mahoraga ignored Dante. It vanished. It reappeared in the sky, directly in the path of Gojo's blue. The singularity hit the Shikigami. The wheel spun. Click. The gravity distortion washed over Mahoraga harmlessly. It had already adapted to the concept of attraction. It wound up a punch capable of leveling a mountain and drove it toward Gojo's face. Gojo raised his infinity. Thud. The punch connected. Gojo's eyes widened. For the first time in a decade, a physical attack had touched him. Mahoraga had adapted to the infinity. Gojo was blasted backward, crashing through the ruins of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building. "Gojo!" Yuji screamed from the ground. He was powerless, his energy spent. forced to watch his teacher and his friend destroy each other. Dante looked up. He saw Gojo take the hit. He saw the wheel turn. That wheel, Dante analyzed, his playful demeanor vanishing completely. It's a learning computer. If it sees a move twice, it downloads the patch. Dante looked at Rebellion. He looked at his guns. He looked at the demon forms he had mastered. So, Dante whispered, a dangerous grin returning, I just have to hit it with something that has no logic, something it can't solve. He dropped Rebellion. He spread his arms. The air in Tokyo turned crimson. The ground liquefied into magma. The sky bled. Sin, devil, trigger. The transformation was explosive. The shockwave flattened the remaining structures in Shinjuku. Dante emerged in his true form, the glowing obsidian demon lord with 4 wings of fire. He flew up, a comet of hellfire ascending to meet the false god. Sukuna, floating above the devastation, felt the shift. He looked down. Oh, the insect becomes a dragon. Dante didn't stop. He flew past Sukuna, grabbing Mahoraga by the face. The momentum carried them both higher, piercing the cloud layer, entering the stratosphere. Mahoraga slashed at Dante's armor. The positive energy blade struck the Sin Devil trigger scales. Sparks. It didn't cut. The density of Dante's demonic form was too high. The adaptation was incomplete against this level of raw output. You can't adapt. Dante's voice boomed, vibrating the entire atmosphere. To chaos. Dante charged energy in his chest, the demolition beam, but he didn't fire it. He compressed it. He held it in his hands, mixing it with the conceptual power of his sword. Below, Gojo rocketed out of the rubble. He saw Dante in the sky. He saw the Shikigami. He saw the opening. Gojo laughed, a manic, blood-soaked laugh. "Show off!" Gojo yelled. Gojo began the chant. He didn't care about the risk. He needed absolute destruction. 9 ropes, polarized light, crow and declaration, between front and back. He combined the attraction of blue and the repulsion of red. Hollow technique, purple. Up in the stratosphere, Dante released his hold on Mahoraga. He aimed downward. Judgment! Dante didn't fire a beam. He summoned meteors. Not rock, but condensed constructs of demonic energy. The 2 attacks converged. From below, the erasing void of hollow purple. From above, the apocalyptic bombardment of judgment. Mahoraga was caught in the sandwich of 2 different universes, collapsing on a single point. The wheel spun frantically. Click, 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 click. It tried to adapt to the void. It tried to adapt to hell. It tried to adapt to the combination. Crack. The golden wheel shattered. The adaptation failed. The logic broke. The explosion that followed was silent. It was a sphere of pure white light that engulfed Shinjuku, vaporizing the clouds, the rain, and the shadows. Kenjaku, watching from a safe distance, shielded his eyes. Magnificent, he whispered, genuinely awed. A collision of the strongest. When the light faded, a massive crater, perfectly spherical, replaced the district. Dante, reverted to human form, fell from the sky. He was unconscious, his energy reserves completely drained. Gojo caught him. Gojo hovered in the center of the crater, holding the unconscious Dante by the back of his shirt. Gojo's uniform was torn, his energy low, but he was alive. But across the crater, Ryomen Sukuna stood. He was missing an arm. Half of his face was burned away, revealing the raw muscle beneath. Mahoraga was gone, vaporized in the blast. But Sukuna was smiling. He looked at the unconscious Dante. He looked at the exhausted Gojo. "You destroyed my toy," Sukuna rasped. his flesh bubbling as he engaged reverse curse technique to heal Megumi's body. "But you taught me something valuable." Sukuna raised his remaining hand. He pointed 2 fingers, not at Gojo, at the space behind Gojo. "The adaptation," Sukuna explained, his voice thick with malice. "Mahoraga showed me the way. It didn't just adapt to your infinity, it adapted to the space you occupy." Gojo's 6 eyes widened. He saw the spark of cursed energy. It wasn't a technique he had seen before. It was an evolution. World, dismantle. The slash didn't travel. It simply cut the reality where Gojo existed. Bang! A gunshot rang out. Not from Dante. He was out cold. Not from Gojo. From the edge of the crater. Maki Zenin held a sniper rifle, a mundane, non-cursed, anti-material rifle she had scavenged. The bullet hit Sukuna's hand just as he released the technique. The impact was negligible to a special grade, but the timing was divine. It shifted Sukuna's aim by a fraction of a degree. The invisible slash tore through the air. It missed Gojo's neck. It sliced through the air, shearing the top off the Tokyo Tower in the distance. Gojo froze. He felt the death that had just passed him. The infinity had been bypassed. If that slash had connected... Sukuna looked at his hand. He looked at Maki in the distance. "Interference," Sukuna growled. Before he could fire again, a massive shadow fell over the crater. The merger beast, damaged but not dead, was moving. Kenjaku was recalling his pieces. "That is enough playing." Kenjaku's voice echoed over the battlefield. "Sukuna, we have what we need. The ritual is primed." Sukuna clicked his tongue. He looked at Gojo, then at Dante. "Next time," Sukuna promised, "I will cut the world itself to reach you." He sank into the shadows, disappearing with the darkness. Gojo stood in the silence of the crater. The rain began to fall again. He looked at Dante, who was snoring softly in his grip. He looked at Maki, who was reloading the rifle. He looked at Yuji, who was running toward them, tears in his eyes. Gojo exhaled, a long, shaky breath. "We survived," Gojo whispered, looking at the slice in the Tokyo Tower. "But just barely." He hoisted Dante onto his shoulder. "Hey, Sleeping Beauty," Gojo muttered to the unconscious devil hunter. "You owe me a pizza and a new shirt." The fluorescent lights of the underground medical bay hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. The air smelled of antiseptic, rubbing alcohol, and the faint, lingering scent of menthol cigarettes. Dante woke up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright on the metal slab. His hand instinctively reached for rebellion, but his fingers grabbed only air. "Easy, big guy," a tired female voice said. Shoko Yeri sat on a swivel chair, a cigarette dangling from her lips. She looked at Dante with the expression of a mechanic trying to fix a spaceship with a wrench. "Your physiology makes no sense," Shoko stated, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. "I tried to apply reverse curse technique to your exhaustion, but your cells attack the positive energy like it was a virus. You have a heart rate of 40, your body temperature is 105 degrees, and you have enough adrenaline in your blood to kill an elephant." Dante rubbed his face, feeling the stubble on his chin. "Yeah, I run hot. Where's my coat? And my sword?" "Coat is being stitched. Sword is in the corner. It scares the nurses." Shoko pointed to the massive blade resting against the wall. Dante hopped off the table. His boots hit the floor with a heavy thud. He felt drained, the Sin Devil trigger having burned through his reserves like jet fuel, but his natural regeneration was already topping him off. "Where's the white-haired guy?" Dante asked, stretching his arms until his spine cracked like a whip. "Which one?" "We have a collection now," Shoko dryly remarked. "Gojo is in the briefing room. He's unusually quiet." The briefing room was a repurposed classroom in the lower levels of Jujutsu High. The mood was grim. Satoru Gojo sat on a desk, legs crossed, staring at the floor. The playfulness was gone. He was replaying the last 10 seconds of the fight in his head, the feeling of the world parting millimeters from his neck. Maki stood by the window, cleaning the rifle. Yuji sat in a chair, his head in his hands. Kashimo was pacing in the corner, vibrating with impatience. The door kicked open. "Honey, I'm home," Dante announced, strolling in. He looked terrible, bruised, shirt torn, hair messy, but his swagger was intact. Gojo looked up. A small smile returned to his face. "You slept for 12 hours. Lightweight." "I was recharging," Dante corrected. He walked over to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and drew a crude slice of pizza. "So, status report. The four-armed ugly guy ran away. The giant white monster is dead, and we are still in a crater." "Sukuna has evolved," Gojo said, his voice serious. "That slash, it didn't target me. It targeted the space I occupied. My infinity couldn't filter it because the filter itself was cut." "Dimension slash," Dante nodded, leaning against the wall. "My brother does that. It's a cheap trick. You just have to not be there when he swings." "Easier said than done," Maki muttered. "It's instantaneous." "So is dying," Dante countered. "Look, he showed his hand. He has a super move. Now we know. Next time, we don't let him charge it up." Yuji spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. "He has Megumi." The room went silent. Yuji looked up, his eyes red. "He has Megumi's body, and Megumi's technique, and now he has that slash. We can't kill him without killing Fushiguro." Dante looked at the kid. He walked over, grabbed a chair, and spun it around, sitting straddling it to face Yuji. "Kid," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave, "I've been there." Yuji blinked. "What?" "My brother," Dante said, staring into the middle distance. "Virgil. He wanted power. He took it. He became a monster. I had to fight him. I had to cut him down." Did you save him?" Yuji asked, hope fragile in his voice. Dante paused. He thought about the Nilo Angelo armor. He thought about the Cliffoth roots. He thought about the recent sparring matches in the underworld. "We have a complicated relationship," Dante admitted. "But yeah, he's still kicking. The point is, just because someone is possessed or corrupted doesn't mean they're gone. You beat the demon, you save the human. Usually involves a lot of stabbing." "We need to separate them," Angel spoke up from where she was hovering near the ceiling. "My Jacob's ladder can extinguish the cursed object, the finger, within the boy. If we weaken Sukuna enough, I can burn him out without killing the host." "Great," Dante clapped his hands. "We beat the king to a pulp, Angel blasts him with the holy spotlight, and we get the moody kid back. Simple plan. I like simple." "It's not that simple," Gojo warned. "Kenjaku is starting the merger. The barrier around Japan is shifting. If that giant baby in the sky fully wakes up, it won't matter if we save Megumi. Everyone dies." Gojo hopped off the desk. He adjusted his blindfold. "We have one day," Gojo announced. "Decisive battle, December 24th. We finish this where it started." "Christmas Eve?" Dante raised an eyebrow. "Dramatic. I hope you got me a present." Gojo reached behind the desk. He pulled out a flat, square cardboard box. It was warm. "Pepperoni and jalapeno," Gojo said, sliding the box across the table. "I had Ijichi drive 3 hours to find a place that was open." Dante stared at the box. It was the Holy Grail. He opened the lid. The steam rose up, carrying the scent of melted cheese and spicy meat. It was the most beautiful thing he had seen since entering this dimension. "Satoru Gojo," Dante said solemnly, picking up a slice. "You are officially my best friend. Sorry, Yuji, you've been demoted. He took a bite. He chewed. He swallowed. Solid 8 out of 10, Dante judged. Crust is a little thick, but I'll allow it. Later that night, the group sat on the roof of the school. The city skyline was dark, save for the fires burning in the distance. The merger beast loomed in the clouds, a dormant horror waiting for the signal. Maki was sharpening her sword. Yuji and Choso were training in the courtyard below. Kashimo was meditating, or perhaps just charging, on a lightning rod. Gojo stood next to Dante at the railing. "You're not from here," Gojo stated. It wasn't a question. "Nope," Dante replied, finishing his third slice. "Wrong turn at the Hell Gate. Story of my life." "When this is over," Gojo said, looking at the moon, "the balance will try to correct itself. You'll probably be pulled back." "Probably," Dante shrugged. "I got bills to pay back home anyway. Lady is probably selling my furniture as we speak." Gojo turned to him. "Thank you for saving me from the box and for saving me today." "Don't get mushy on me, Goggles," Dante smirked. "Just make sure you don't miss next time. That world slash is nasty. If I wasn't made of tougher stuff, I'd be too Dante right now." "I won't miss," Gojo promised. His voice held a scary kind of certainty. "I'm the strongest. I have to be." "Heavy crown," Dante murmured. "My dad wore it. My brother wants it. Personally, I prefer being the guy who knocks the crown off." Dante finished the pizza and wiped his hands on his pants. "All right, tomorrow we fight the brain, the king, and the giant baby. Sounds like a Tuesday." He looked at Gojo. "Hey, do you think this Kenjaku guy has a monologue prepared? I love interrupting those." Gojo grinned, the tension of the impending apocalypse melting away for a brief second. "Oh, definitely. He loves to hear himself talk." "Good," Dante said, drawing ivory and checking the chamber. "I'll aim for the mouth." Status update, party condition, rested, mostly. Dante is healed. Gojo is combat ready, but wary of the world slash. The plan: weakens Sukuna to Angel, uses Jacob's ladder to separate Megumi. The clock. The final battle is set for December 24th. The pizza finally consumed. December 24th. The snow that fell on Tokyo was gray, stained by the lingering particulate matter of the Shinjuku crater. It did not melt when it hit the ground. The earth was too cold, the life drained from the soil by the weeks of Culling Game rituals. The procession walked down the center of the shattered highway. There was no stealth this time, no tactics of concealment. Satoru Gojo led the phalanx. His hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but the air around him hummed with a violent frequency. To his right walked Dante, chewing on a piece of strawberry gum, rebellion resting on his shoulder. To his left, Yuji Itadori and Maki Zenin. Behind them, the support, Kashimo, Higuruma, Choso, and Angel. They reached the designated battlefield, the ruins of the Shibuya crossing, where the tragedy had begun. Waiting for them stood the triumvirate of ruin. Kenjaku, wearing Geto's face in a ceremonial robe, stood with his hands tucked into his sleeves. Uram stood silently, mist forming around their feet. And sitting on a throne of debris, chin resting on his hand, was Ryomen Sukuna. "You're late," Sukuna noted, his voice carrying effortlessly across the distance. "Traffic was killer," Dante quipped, popping a bubble of gum. "And we stopped for souvenirs. I got you a snow globe. It's shaking, see?" Dante shook his empty hand. "Ha," Sukuna smirked. He stood up. The pressure in the area doubled. Kenjaku stepped forward. "Satoru and the anomaly. I must admit, I didn't expect you to coordinate. Chaos and order usually cancel each other out." "We're not coordinating," Gojo said, stepping forward. "We're just sharing the meal." Gojo pointed at Sukuna. "I'll take the king." He pointed at Uraume. "Maki, Yuji, Choso, the ice servant is yours." Then he pointed at Kenjaku. "Dante, the brain is all yours. Try not to let him talk too much." "No promises," Dante shrugged. "I like a good villain speech. It gives me time to charge my style meter." The bell tolls. There was no referee, no signal. Kashimo moved first. He didn't care about the plan. He launched himself at Sukuna, a bolt of living lightning. "Out of my way, vermin!" Sukuna backhanded the air. A wall of dismantle slashes intercepted Kashimo, but the lightning god phased through them, turning his body into pure plasma. The chaos erupted. Gojo warped instantly, grabbing Sukuna by the face and dragging him miles away, crashing through buildings to isolate the fight. The sound of their departure was like a jet engine exploding. Maki and Yuji engaged Uraume. Ice spikes met the split-soul katana. That left Dante and Kenjaku standing alone in the center of the crossing. Kenjaku smiled. It was the smile of a scientist looking at a new specimen. "Dante," Kenjaku said politely, "I have studied the recordings of your fight with Sukuna. Your physiology is fascinating. You utilize demonic energy, which is chemically similar to cursed energy, but volatile in the opposite direction. It's entropic." "You talk like a textbook," Dante said, drawing ebony and ivory. "Boring." He fired. 2 bullets aimed at Kenjaku's knees. Kenjaku didn't move. Gravity. The bullets stopped 3 feet from Kenjaku. They didn't hit a barrier. They simply fell. The gravity in that specific coordinate had been increased by a factor of 50. The lead flattened against the asphalt. "Kaori Itadori's technique," Kenjaku explained. "Anti-gravity system. Simple but effective against projectiles." "Gravity, huh?" Dante holstered the guns. "I hate gravity. It keeps pulling me down." Dante blurred forward. Stinger. He thrust Rebellion forward, a supersonic lunge aimed at Kenjaku's heart. Kenjaku opened his mouth. A mass of curses erupted. A swarm of centipedes reinforced with cursed energy. They wrapped around the blade, slowing it down with sheer biomass. "Cursed spirit manipulation," Kenjaku intoned. "Maximum Uzumaki miniature." The centipedes condensed into a beam of black energy, firing point blank into Dante's face. Boom! Dante skidded back, his boots carving trenches in the road. Smoke rose from his chest. He brushed it off. "Gross," Dante complained. "Did you just vomit on me? That is unsanitary." "You are durable," Kenjaku observed, releasing a grade 1 curse, a massive armored elephantine spirit. "But can you withstand the weight of history?" The elephant curse charged. Dante sighed. "Style, Royal Guard." He stood still. As the massive curse lowered its tusks to impale him, Dante raised a single hand. "Block!" The impact should have turned Dante to paste. Instead, the elephant curse stopped dead, its tusks shattering against Dante's palm. The kinetic energy was absorbed instantly. "Release!" Dante flicked his wrist. The stored energy exploded outward. The elephant curse didn't just die, it was erased, blown backward into Kenjaku. Kenjaku dodged gracefully, but the shock wave tore the sleeve of his robe. "Impressive," Kenjaku muttered, his eyes narrowing. "You don't exercise curses. You break them physically. You treat them like matter." "They're in my way," Dante said. He switched weapons. Weapon King Cerberus. The nunchaku appeared. "You like summoning things? Let's see how you handle a storm." Dante spun the weapon. "Thunderbolt!" Lightning rained down, but unlike Kashimo's directed bolts, this was an area of effect storm. Kenjaku was forced to move. He summoned a horde of flying curses to act as a shield, but the demonic lightning fried them instantly. The anti-gravity couldn't repress the sheer volume of the attack. Kenjaku realized with a start that he was on the defensive. He, the mastermind who had lived 1,000 years, was being pressed by a man who treated combat like a rhythm game. "You represent chaos," Kenjaku analyzed, weaving through the lightning strikes. "My goal is order. The merger creates a new form of humanity, a singular, perfect being." "Sounds lonely," Dante said, appearing behind Kenjaku. Kenjaku's eyes widened. He teleported without a sound. Dante swung the ice staff. Kenjaku barely managed to activate a special grade curse, Ganesha, to intercept the blow. The curse's ability was to remove obstacles, but Dante wasn't an obstacle. He was a force of nature. The staff shattered Ganesha's tusk and slammed into Kenjaku's ribs. Crack. Kenjaku was launched across the intersection, crashing into the famous Starbucks. Glass and coffee machines exploded. Dante walked slowly toward the wreckage. "You want to merge humanity?" Dante asked, spinning the nunchaku. "Buddy, humanity is messy. That's the point. You try to mix it all into one cup, it's just gonna taste like mud." From the rubble, Kenjaku laughed. He stood up, wiping blood from his mouth. His forehead stitches were straining. "You misunderstand," Kenjaku whispered. "I don't care about the taste. I just want to see what happens." He clapped his hands. The ground beneath Shibuya began to rumble. The black sludge of the merger, which had been pooling in the sewers, erupted like a geyser. "I wasn't going to use this yet," Kenjaku admitted. "It is incomplete. But against you, I need a bigger vessel." The black sludge coalesced. It didn't form a beast this time. It formed a suit, a massive 100-foot-tall armor made of screaming souls and cursed mud wrapped around Kenjaku. It looked like a twisted version of a Buddhist statue, possessing 1,000 arms. Merger prototype, 100- Type Guanyin Bodhisattva, corrupted. The giant statue loomed over the city, its 1,000 hands raised, each one holding a ball of gravitational darkness. Dante looked up. He whistled. "Okay," Dante grinned, swapping King Cerberus for Cavalier, the motorcycle. "Now that is a final boss." He revved the engine. "Let's see if it bleeds." The sheer displacement of air caused by the movement of the 100 Type Guanyin Bodhisattva created a localized hurricane. The statue, a grotesque amalgamation of black sludge and weeping souls, raised 50 of its right arms. Kenjaku, suspended in the forehead of the construct like a pilot in a cockpit of flesh, looked down with clinical detachment. "Humanity's fear is heavy," Kenjaku broadcasted, his voice amplified by the souls screaming within the armor. "Let us see if you can carry it." The hands descended. It was not a punch, it was a collapsing sky. 50 strikes, each the size of a bus, raining down in a sequence designed to leave no escape vectors. Dante slammed the clutch on Cavalier. The rear wheel, a rotating buzzsaw of electrified metal, tore into the asphalt, glowing hot orange. "Heavy?" Dante yelled over the roar of the engine and the screaming wind. "Buddy, I carry a sword that weighs more than your ego." He popped the clutch. Style, Swordmaster, Cavalier. The motorcycle didn't just drive forward, it launched. Dante wheelied into the first descending palm. The saw tires met the cursed mud. Scree! The sound was deafening. The demonic lightning wreathed around the wheels, shredded the cursed energy binding the construct. Dante didn't get crushed. He drilled through the hand, exploding out the back of the wrist in a shower of black ichor. He landed on the forearm of the second arm, throttled the engine, and accelerated up the limb. "Interceptor!" The bike split in two. Dante held the halves, massive chainsaw-like clubs, and spun. He became a buzzsaw of red lightning, carving a path through the forest of arms trying to swat him. Arm number 4, severed. Arm number 10, shattered. Arm number 20, used as a ramp. Kenjaku watched the monitor inside the cockpit, his eyes widening. The anomaly was treating the ultimate manifestation of the merger like a skate park. Gravity technique, lapse, blue, inverted, Kenjaku shouted. He reversed the gravity on the statue's surface, trying to fling Dante into the stratosphere. Dante felt the lift. His boots lost contact with the sludge. He was floating away. "Oh, no you don't!" Style trickster. Air trick. Dante teleported. He vanished from the gravity well and reappeared directly in front of the statue's face, mid-air, refusing the bike back into vehicle mode beneath him. He was staring Kenjaku in the eye, separated only by a layer of translucent, hardened soul matter. "Knock, knock!" Dante grinned, revving the engine to the red line. He slammed the front wheel against the barrier. The sparks flew like fireworks. "You are irrational," Kenjaku screamed, panic finally seeping into his voice. He commanded the remaining 50 arms to clap together, to crush the gnat on his forehead. "Irrational?" Dante laughed, the engine screaming. "It's called style." Gear wheel. Dante pulled the bike back, then slammed it forward. The saws dug in. The barrier cracked. Crash. The glass shattered. Dante drove the motorcycle straight into the cockpit. The impact was catastrophic. The spinning wheel caught Kenjaku's chest, shredding the ceremonial robes and grinding into the ancient sorcerer's reinforced flesh. Kenjaku was launched backward, out the back of the statue's head, free-falling toward the ruins of Shibuya. The massive statue, decapitated and pilotless, groaned. It began to dissolve, the souls weeping as they evaporated into the ether. Meanwhile, the peak. Miles away in the ruins of Roppongi, the skyline was being rewritten. Satoru Gojo and Ryomen Sukuna were not fighting on the ground. They were fighting in the air, jumping between the falling debris of a toppled skyscraper. Sukuna was bloodied, his healing factor slowing down, but his eyes were alight with a terrifying focus. He wasn't looking at Gojo. He was looking at the shape of the space Gojo occupied. Dragon scale, repulsion, recoil. Sukuna chanted, weaving signs with his 3 remaining hands. Gojo saw the spark, the world slash. Gojo didn't dodge left or right. He teleported forward. He appeared inside Sukuna's guard, his face inches from the King of Curses. "You're looking past me, Sukuna," Gojo yelled. He grabbed Sukuna's bottom left arm and ripped it off. Sukuna didn't flinch. He used the distraction to fire the slash with his upper right hand. SHING. The slash cut the air where Gojo's chest had been a microsecond ago. It sliced the top off the Mori Tower behind them. Gojo jammed his thumb into Sukuna's eye socket. Blue! A point-blank implosion. Sukuna's head snapped back, half his face crushed inward. The King of Curses was blasted down, crashing through 10 floors of concrete. Gojo hovered in the air, breathing hard. His shirt was slashed, a shallow cut across his chest. The world slash had grazed him. "Too close," Gojo whispered. "He's getting faster at targeting the coordinates." Back in Shibuya, Kenjaku hit the ground hard. He bounced, rolling through the debris of the Starbucks, coming to a stop against a twisted guardrail. He tried to stand, but his legs failed him. The damage from the motorcycle impact was severe. His healing was trying to knit his sternum back together, but the demonic energy left in the wound was inhibiting the RCT. A shadow fell over him. Dante parked the bike. He kicked the kickstand down. He slowly dismounted, walking toward the fallen mastermind. He didn't draw a weapon. He just stood there, towering over the ancient brain. "You know," Dante said, looking down, "for a guy who wants to evolve humanity, you sure rely on a lot of old tricks. Giant statues, gravity, bugs." It's all been done. Kenjaku coughed up blood. He looked up, his expression twisting into a sneer. You are a mistake, a variable that shouldn't exist. If not for you, the barrier would have held. Tengen would have merged. If, Dante interrupted. If my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike. Dante reached into his pocket. He pulled out ebony. End of the line, Brainiac. Wait, Kenjaku gasped. Do you not want to know the secrets of the Heian era? The truth about the soul? Dante cocked the hammer. Buddy, I don't even read the instruction manuals for my weapons. Bang! The bullet didn't hit Kenjaku's head. It hit the ground next to his ear. Kenjaku flinched. Just kidding, Dante grinned. I'm not the executioner. He stepped aside. From the shadows, a figure emerged. He wore a suit dusted with ash. He held a gavel that was glowing with the weight of a final judgment. Higuruma. Thanks for the assist. Higuruma nodded to Dante. Dante saluted with 2 fingers and walked away, back to his bike. All yours, counselor. Throw the book at him. Higuruma stood over Kenjaku. The domain expanded instantly, but it wasn't a trial this time. It was a sentencing. Kenjaku, Higuruma stated, his eyes cold, for the crimes of mass murder, body theft, and conspiracy to commit genocide. The executioner's sword appeared in Higuruma's hand. It glowed with a light that killed souls. The penalty is death. Kenjaku looked at the sword. He looked at Dante riding away. He looked at the ruined sky. How anticlimactic, Kenjaku whispered. Higuruma swung the blade. The final phase. Dante rode back toward the group. Maki and Yuji were finishing off Uraume. The ice user was encased in a prison of their own frozen blood, courtesy of Choso. But the air suddenly changed. It wasn't victory, it was a vacuum. The ground shook, not a tremor, a heartbeat. From the crater where Gojo had blasted Sukuna, a pillar of black light erupted. It pierced the clouds, turning the sky into a swirling vortex of negativity. Megumi's soul was screaming. Dante stopped the bike. He looked at the pillar. Uh-oh, Dante muttered. Gojo appeared next to the bike, teleporting in. He looked exhausted. I couldn't finish him, Gojo admitted, wiping blood from his eye. He ate something. Ate what? Dante asked. A spinach can. The final finger, Gojo said grimly, and the mummified corpse of his original body. The pillar of light dispersed. Floating in the air was not Megumi Fushiguro. It was Ryomen Sukuna, but not the possessed boy. He had completed the reincarnation. He had 4 arms, 2 faces. He was 10 feet tall, a mountain of muscle and tattoos. He held 2 cursed tools, Kamutoke, lightning, and Heighten, spear. The true form of the King of Curses had returned, and in his lower right hand, he held something else. He held the unconscious body of Megumi Fushiguro, ripped out of the vessel during the transformation, dangling by the neck. Humanity! Sukuna's voice boomed, creating shock waves that cracked the pavement. The age of curses begins now. Dante looked at the 4-armed giant. He looked at the lightning tool. He looked at the spear. He sighed a long, deep exhale. 4 arms, Dante noted. 2 weapons. Ugly face. He looked at Gojo. You take the left side, I'll take the right side. We meet in the middle? Gojo lowered his blindfold completely. His eyes were burning with a blue flame. Don't get slow on me, old man. Dante drew Rebellion and King Cerberus. Jackpot. The pressure in Shibuya was no longer atmospheric. It was gravitational. Ryomen Sukuna, in his Heian-era form, stood as a monument to ruin. 4 arms, 2 faces, and a mouth on his stomach that chanted incantations without the need for lungs. He raised Kamutoka. the cursed tool of lightning. "Tremble," Sukuna commanded. A storm of black lightning erupted, not from the sky, but from the weapon itself. It sought to vaporize everything in a 10-block radius. Dante stepped forward. He didn't block. He didn't dodge. Style Royal Guard Dreadnought. His skin turned into a metallic obsidian shell. The lightning struck him and was absorbed instantly, the energy feeding his own reserves. "Thanks for the recharge, Sparky," Dante yelled, his armor shattering as he burst forward. Simultaneously, Gojo warped. He appeared behind Sukuna, aiming a red orb at the king's spine. Sukuna spun, his two left arms blocking with Heighten, the spear. Clang! The impact created a shock wave that flattened the remaining debris of the crossing. "Fast," Sukuna acknowledged, grinning with his second mouth. "But predictable." Sukuna swung his lower right arm, the one holding the unconscious Megumi by the throat. He used the boy as a bludgeon, forcing Gojo to abort his attack and phase out of reality to avoid hitting his student. "Coward!" Yuji screamed from the sidelines, his fists bleeding from how hard he was clenching them. "It is efficiency, brat," Sukuna sneered. He held Megumi up like a trophy. "As long as I hold this vessel, the Six Eyes cannot use his void. And the demon," he looked at Dante, "cannot unleash his full destruction." Dante stopped twirling his guns. He stood 20 meters away, staring at Megumi's limp form. "Hostage situation," Dante murmured. "Classic. Section 1, Paragraph 4 of the Villain Handbook." Dante closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. The world seemed to vibrate. A low hum, like a turntable slowing down, filled the air. Style Quicksilver. Time lag. Color drained from the world. The gray snow froze in midair. The lightning crackling around Sukuna paused in jagged arcs. Gojo, trapped in his own high-speed perception, watched in slow motion as Dante moved. Dante didn't run. He walked. He walked past the frozen lightning. He walked up to the towering king of curses. He gently pried Sukuna's fingers off Megumi's neck. The grip was iron, but in stop time, force was irrelevant. Dante pulled the boy free. He carried Megumi across the battlefield, placing him gently in the arms of a frozen Maki Zenin. He walked back to Sukuna. He stood directly in front of the king's face. He pulled out a red rose, from where, nobody knows, and tucked it into Sukuna's sash. He leaned in close to Sukuna's ear. "Checkmate." He snapped his fingers. Time resumed. The color rushed back. The snow continued to fall. Sukuna's hand clamped down on empty air. He blinked, looking at his empty palm, then at the heavy weight suddenly gone from his grip. He looked up. Megumi was safely with the sorcerers, and Dante was standing right in front of him, smirking. "Looking for something?" Dante asked. Sukuna's four eyes widened. For the first time, genuine confusion clouded his face. "When did you—" "Don't blink," Dante said. Boom! Dante unleashed a point-blank stinger with rebellion. The blade drove into Sukuna's chest, pushing the King of Curses back through 3 skyscrapers. "Now!" Dante roared. "Jump him!" The total war. The hesitation vanished. The battlefield exploded. Gojo Satoru was the first to arrive at the impact zone. He didn't use a technique. He used pure, unadulterated violence. He grabbed Sukuna's upper arms and pulled, using blue to amplify his strength to godlike levels. Sukuna roared, kicking Gojo away. But before he could recover, Yuji Itadori was there. Yuji didn't strike the flesh, he struck the outline of the soul. Black flash. The impact distorted space. Red and black sparks flew. Yuji's fist connected with Sukuna's stomach mouth. "Give him back!" Yuji screamed. The blow rattled Sukuna's soul, weakening his hold on the physical realm. The king coughed up blood. Actual blood, not curses. Maki Zenin was next. She came in low, the split-soul katana aiming for the ankles. She severed the Achilles tendon on Sukuna's right leg. Sukuna stumbled. "Insects, all of you!" He began to chant. "Scale of the dragon, recoil, twin meteors." He was charging the world slash, an omnidirectional one. He intended to cut the entire city of Tokyo into a grid. "Not on my watch." Dante was in the air. He had transformed. Sin Devil Trigger. The four-winged demon lord hovered above the chaos. He didn't fire a beam. He summoned swords. Summoned swords. Hundreds of glowing red spectral blades surrounded Sukuna. "Round trip!" The swords flew. They didn't just cut, they pinned. They drove through Sukuna's limbs, pinning him to the rubble of the Shibuya 109 building. Sukuna struggled, his world-slash chant interrupted by the sheer volume of steel piercing his flesh. Gojo landed next to Dante. He was glowing purple. He had been charging it while the others distracted the king. "Dante!" Gojo yelled. "Do you trust me? With my pizza?" "Yes," Dante's demonic voice boomed. "With my life? Let's find out." "Channel it!" Gojo commanded. "Pour everything you have into the void." Dante understood. He grabbed Gojo's shoulder. The demonic energy of Sparda flowed into the limitless energy of the six eyes. Red and blue mixed. But this wasn't just hollow purple. This was something else. A fusion of cursed energy and demonic power. The orb formed between Gojo's hands. It wasn't purple, it was black. A void so deep it drank the light of the stars. "Maximum output," Gojo whispered, sweat bleeding from his eyes. "Crossover technique." Dante grinned, his fangs gleaming. "Jackpot." They fired. The beam didn't travel. It simply erased the vector between them and Sukuna. Sukuna saw it coming. He looked at the black light. He looked at the sorcerers, the demon, the brat. He smiled, a warrior's smile. "Not bad," Sukuna acknowledged. The beam hit. There was no sound. Sound requires a medium, and the beam erased the air. Shibuya was engulfed in absolute silence. The silhouette of the four-armed king disintegrated. The cursed tools shattered. The Heian form was peeled away layer by layer, atom by atom, until nothing remained but the fading echo of a curse. The aftermath. The light faded. The silence lingered for 10 seconds. Then the sound of the wind returned. The Shibuya 109 building was gone. In its place was a smooth, glass-like trench stretching to the ocean. Gojo Satoru collapsed to his knees, his blindfold gone, his eyes dull and exhausted. He breathed in ragged gasps. Dante reverted to human form. He fell backward, landing in a pile of snow. He stared up at the gray clouds, which were finally parting to reveal a sliver of sunrise. "That," Dante wheezed, "was a solid 9 out of 10. Yuji ran to the edge of the trench. There was nothing left of Sukuna, but lying in the rubble, untouched by the blast, thanks to Yuji's soul strike separating him at the last second, was a single shriveled finger. And next to it, breathing shallowly, was Megumi Fushiguro. "Megumi!" Yuji slid down the crater, grabbing his friend. Megumi's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Yuji. He looked at the destroyed city. "Yuji!" Megumi rasped. "Did we catch the train?" Yuji laughed, tears streaming down his face. Yeah, we caught it." The departure. On the ridge, Dante sat up. He checked his guns. Empty. He checked his sword. Chipped. He looked at his hand. It was becoming transparent. "Uh-oh," Dante said. "Looks like my visa is expiring." Gojo limped over, supported by Maki. He looked at Dante's fading hand. "You're going back?" Gojo asked. "The balance is correcting. Dante nodded. Can't have two handsome devils in one universe. It confuses the plot. He stood up. The dimensional tear, the same one that brought him here, was opening behind him. It smelled of pizza and cheap whiskey. Home. Dante looked at the group, the battered, traumatized, victorious sorcerers. "Hey!" Dante called out. They all looked at him. "You guys are all right," Dante said. He pointed at Yuji. "Kid, keep punching." He pointed at Maki. "Keep scary." He pointed at Gojo. "And you, try not to get sealed in a box again. It ruins your hair." Gojo chuckled. "I'll try. Send a postcard from hell." "I will," Dante promised, "if the postage isn't too high." He stepped backward into the rift. "Devils never cry," Dante whispered. The rift snapped shut. The snow continued to fall on Tokyo, covering the scars of the battle. The King of Curses was dead. The merger was stopped. And somewhere in another universe, a phone rang in a messy office. Dante picked it up, putting his boots on the desk. "Devil may cry," Dante answered, smiling. "Password is pizza." The narrative thread has reached its terminus. The current timeline stabilizes, and the audio transmission ends here. But the portal never truly closes. It only waits for the next divergence. To ensure you are present when reality fractures again, you must align with the signal. Subscribe to What If Portal Comics. It is the only way to guarantee your passage into the next chapter. The archives are vast, and another world is already waiting for your observation on the screen. The next jump is yours to make. For now, let the static fade. Enjoy the music in this moment of stillness while you decide your next destination. See you in the next reality.